Chapter 1031. Zhou Hong, who had just broken through not long ago, used a shocking sword to kill over 100 yellow battlefield spirits, which shocked everyone. In the same level, Sword Emperor's strength was definitely much stronger than Wu Shang's. Moreover, he took advantage of the opponent's attack and used the Ling Jian godly art. The reason why Jun Changshao was able to fight those above his level was also related to his sword cultivation aptitude. Moreover, he was a sword king and martial king. If it was just one of them, even if he had the possibility of fighting those above his level, it wouldn't be too shocking. So strong. Xiao Ziji, who was resisting all kinds of attacks, was surprised. Whoosh! Whoosh! At this moment, a beam of light suddenly flew past his ear, and then directly pierced through the battlefield specter's helmet. How many times have I told you? Don't be distracted during a battle. Yi Xingchen flew over from afar and said proudly. Xiao Ziji didn't say anything. He raised Yun Wuxia and said, I will attract the firepower. You guys are in charge of attacking. No need. Yi Xingchen suddenly rushed over, and the true Yang sword appeared out of nowhere. He said, This is troublesome. Swish, swish. With a wave of his wrist, the sword light flashed. Bang, bang, bang. In an instant, 4 or 5 battlefield spirits that came from the left and right were beheaded. Night Emperor also cultivated the Ling Jian godly art. Although the power of the one-word sword art wasn't as strong as Zhou Hong, it was good in terms of comprehension. It was quite easy to kill them. Boom, boom. On the other side, the Purple King rushed in. Every time this guy punched, his clothes and pants would burst. In the end, only his red underwear was left. Everyone's mouth twitched. Many martial artists had seen the Purple King before. Every time they saw him exploding his clothes, they would roar in their hearts. This is a super pervert. This pervert didn't just mean exploding his clothes, but also his strength. Not long after Hall Master Purple entered, he entangled 8 battlefield spirits. Not only was the fight exciting, but he also gradually gained the upper hand. Get lost. Boom, boom, boom. Purple Craggy Demon Monarch exploded with purple chi, and the 3 Earth battlefield specters were sent flying. Domineering, domineering. Although Little Purple did not cultivate the martial arts of the sect of all times, her strength was obviously stronger than before after all the tempering of her body and the gradual recovery of her cultivation. Boom, boom, boom. After another round of fighting, the other Earth-level powerhouses were also sent flying. How fierce! All the martial artists were so shocked that their jaws dropped. Shwa! The Purple King raised his hand and locked his gaze on the heaven battlefield specter in the sky. A wicked smile appeared on his face. Shoo! The purple light beam dragged the flowing light and blasted forward. Shwa! The heaven battlefield specter's eyes flickered with a dim light. 2 broken short blades appeared out of thin air, and then suddenly slashed through the void. Swish! Swish! The saber shadow was like a ray of light, cutting through space. The bursting light beam was instantly disintegrated, and then disappeared without a trace. Boom! 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 The saber light pressed down again, and an explosive sound was heard. Kakeek! Strange laughter came from the smoky energy. The Purple King stood proudly in midair, and the saber light attacking him had already been destroyed by the hell rage in his fists. Equipped with the pink gloves, his eyes were filled with fighting spirit. So fragrant. Shwa! Shwa! The Purple King's fists bombarded the void frequently, and the sky was filled with fist shadows like a storm. All the cultivators watched with trepidation. Then, they shifted their gazes to Li Qingyang and the others who had joined the battle later on. It was not that the battle between Hall Master Purple and the Heaven Battlefield Spectre was not exciting enough, but at their level, both their strength and attack speed were too fast. Those who were not at a high level could not see clearly. On the other hand, the battle between the Sect of All Time's disciples could still clearly capture every movement with spiritual senses. Someone exclaimed, Look! Everyone mobilized their spiritual senses and saw Li Qingyang, who had just rushed in, holding the heavenly slaughter lightning mark. 2 fingers of his left hand were placed on the sword and slid from the hilt to the tip. Lightning mark. BZZT. Lightning lines appeared on both sides of the sword, emitting powerful and explosive lightning energy. This was also a special ability of the exclusive divine weapon. Although it was not as powerful as a sure-kill skill, it was similar to adding magic to the weapon. Shua! Li Qingyang's body of thunder punishment erupted and infused it into the heavenly slaughter lightning mark. He raised the sword and slashed at an incoming heaven battlefield specter. Rip! Wherever the sword light passed, lightning snakes splashed. The heaven battlefield specter's helmet and armor were instantly split into two and fell to the ground. This person's weapon is also extraordinary, the martial artist exclaimed. Shua! Shua! Li Qingyang did not stop after he succeeded. He rushed into the crowd with the heaven battlefield specter, enhanced by the lightning mark, and started the coldest battle. BZD. Shua! Shua! Lightning and sword aura intertwined and flashed. After a while, Li Qingyang stood in midair with his sword in hand. More than 10 heaven battlefield specters behind him suddenly collapsed and fell to the ground. Too terrifying. Too monstrous. All the martial artists were deeply shocked by the strength and equipment of the Sect of All Time's disciples. Kujinen was dumbfounded. If they had not been acting in the slaughtering Azura arena back then, they would have been completely annihilated if they had fought with Sect Master Jun and his disciples. Valley Master Ke, Jun Changshao said, "You enter the stronghold first. Leave this to Jun." 5,000 heaven battlefield specters were all experience points. Gosheng naturally hoped that his disciples could fight and not share the experience with others. Okay. Kujinen did not refuse and hurriedly retreated. The 100 Leaves Valley's upper echelons and disciples also stopped. They instantly changed from fighting a bloody battle to spectators. Disciples, listen up. Jun Changshao turned and stood outside the Lingyuan continent stronghold. Destroy all these trash. Yes. The disciples of the Sect of All Times who flew over from afar put on their true yang suits and took out the dragon tooth blades and dragon tooth spears that the patriarch had just given them. They charged in like mad beasts. Boom! Boom! For a moment, the sky outside the Lingyuan continent stronghold flickered. It was a visual feast like fireworks. Whoosh! Suddenly, a stream of light arrow pierced through the void and accurately pierced through the helmet of a yellow battlefield specter. Then its consciousness dissipated and it fell to the ground. Fuck! Looking at the dragon tooth bow in his hand, Li Tiantian said in surprise, "The bow given by the patriarch is so powerful." As a member of the Drizzle Hall, he was already familiar with the guns in the shop, so it was natural for him to use a traditional bow. Among the disciples, Xiao Ziji was the best at using long-range weapons. At this moment, he had already carried Yun Mengxia on his back. Holding the dragon tooth bow in his hand, he pulled the string quickly with his left hand. Streaks of light gathered by spiritual energy darted out and exploded the heads of the ghosts on the battlefield one after another. Whoosh! Whoosh! Boom! 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 In the crowd, Long Xiang was wearing the true yang suit. He held the true yang county spear in his left hand and the dragon tooth spear in his right hand. He slashed and stabbed at times. Boom! Boom! Li Fei, Seven Fields, Hualing, and the others had also rushed over and locked onto the yellow battlefield specters to fight. As for the mystic and earth-level battlefield specters, they left it to old Ding, Jiangya, and the others. The Sect of All Times and the 5,000 battlefield specters were engaged in a fierce battle. Chapter 1032. Outside the Lingyuan continent stronghold, Li Qingyang, who was surrounded by lightning, was fighting against dozens of yellow battlefield wraiths. Although he was surrounded, he had his personal divine weapon in hand. Not only was he not in any danger, but he could also counterattack at the appropriate time. Yi Xingchen, Xiao Ziji, and the others were the same. However, there were as many as 5,000 battlefield ghosts here to punish the Lingyuan continent. In contrast, the Sect of All Times only had 40 to 50. On average, each of them could fight almost 100 ghosts. Boom! 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 High up in the sky, Jun Changshao was controlling the mechanical armed wings to fight a heaven battlefield ghost. From time to time, his spiritual senses would spread below. He frowned slightly and said, "Aren't there too many battlefield ghosts here to punish the Lingyuan continent?" As the falling star continent, which had been punished N times. The number of battlefield ghosts attacking them was at most a few hundred. It was completely incomparable to the thousands here. Still, Jun Changshao thought to himself, my performance wasn't suicidal enough, so I didn't really attract the attention of the upper realm? The system was silent. For the sake of an egg, he killed tens of thousands of existential planes warriors, and then crazily stole opportunities. So much so that all the Earth-level treasures were stolen. Choosing any one of these two things was extremely suicidal. The system said, actually, I've been wondering why the punishment from the upper realm is so light when the host is so suicidal and reckless on the battlefield. Is there something fishy about this? Jun Changshao asked. The system said, the host planned to pretend to be dead in the slaughterhouse. If there's a punishment, it should be the falling star continent. Why would it punish the Lingyuan continent first? Boom! Jun Changshao punched the light of the scythe flying toward him and said, maybe the upper realm is blind. Okay, it's blind then, the system said, but punishing the Lingyuan continent sent so many battlefield ghosts is like hell mode. Why are there only a few hundred people punishing the Lingyuan continent? It's easier than the easy mode. This, Jun Changshao spread his hands and said, when some things can't be explained scientifically, it can only be attributed to, I'm too cool. Please, I'm talking business. Please, I'm talking business. Whoosh. Shwa. Whoosh. The heaven battlefield wraith that had been sent flying charged forward again. The scythe in its hand slashed out a stream of light that tore through space. Jun Changshao immediately withdrew his thoughts and said with a cold look, I must get rid of this guy as soon as possible, so that my disciple won't be in danger. From the looks of it, the sect of all times wasn't at a disadvantage yet, but it was only a matter of time before they were suppressed by the thousands of battlefield wraiths. Therefore, what he needed to do was to deal with the heaven wraiths, and then help his disciples shoulder more of the earth wraiths. Don't say it. Old Ding Old Jiang, and the others couldn't take it anymore. After all, there were 400 to 500 earth and Xian ranked ghosts on the battlefield. If it weren't for their equipment, they would have long since died. Boom! Boom! Gong Sun Haohai, who was in the middle of a fierce battle, was caught off guard, and was blasted down by dozens of Xian battlefield specters. Damn it! Jun Changshao put on the True Yang mask, then held the True Yang sword in his left hand, and the dragon tooth blade in his right. Ho-ho-ho! With the support of his equipment set and weapon, a powerful shockwave erupted. Swish! Jun Changshao flew out, the True Yang sword and dragon tooth blade tearing through space, instantly meeting the incoming stream of light. Break! 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 Boom! 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 The two types of power exploded in the air, instantly stirring up clouds of dust and power. Swish! Jun Changshao darted out, then instantly closed the distance, raised his sword, and slashed at the heaven wraiths, roaring, Die! Whoosh! Whoosh! The light of the sword and saber instantly lit up the sky, and slashed at the thick armor in a cross. Beasty. Swish! The light of the sword and saber splashed out. Jun Changshao's body flashed, and he appeared several feet behind the battlefield wraiths, the sword and saber in his hand hanging down naturally. He lowered his head slightly, and a few strands of black hair danced in the wind. This wasn't a man-made wind, but a natural wind brought about by the spiritual ability riot. The martial artists watching the battle of the sect of all times disciples heard the commotion and looked up. What's going on? Why did that guy in the battlefield wraith stop moving? Crack! Suddenly there was a cracking sound. The heaven battlefield wraith's armor, which had their backs facing Jun Changshao, suddenly cracked, and slanted cross-shaped saber and sword marks appeared. Everyone's eyes widened. Crack, crack, crack. The armor cracked faster and faster, and finally, it completely cracked into countless tiny pieces before everyone's eyes, and then scattered on the ground. Dead. The heaven battlefield wraiths have been killed by Jun Changshao. Oh my god, that's too fast. While the crowd was still in shock, Jun Changshao turned into a streak of light and flew toward Jiangxia. With a swing of his blade, he killed dozens of Xian battlefield specters that were besieging Jiangxia. Die, all of you! Boom! Boom! The light of the sword and saber filled the air, and everywhere it passed, the earth, black and yellow battlefield wraiths were all cut into pieces. All the cultivators sucked in a breath of cold air. This kind of crushing massacre instantly reminded many people of the opportunity of Chance's attack earlier, when that guy started a crazy massacre with a weapon engraved with words. He's here. The devil who slaughtered 20,000 people is back. At this time, if it was a martial artist fighting him, they would definitely be scared out of their wits by Jun Changshao. However, the ones fighting the sect of all times were the battlefield wraiths. They were not afraid, and as long as the upper realm did not give the order to retreat, they would fight until they died. Swoosh, swoosh. As if realizing that Jun Changshao was very strong, the surrounding battlefield wraiths gave up on attacking Li Qingyang and the others, and gathered their strength to charge over with their weapons. In an instant, thousands of battlefield wraiths pressed down from all directions. Jun Changshao stood where he was, and did not choose to dodge. Instead, he put away the dragon tooth blade. Whoosh whoosh. Suddenly, a strong sword aura was released from his body, spreading in all directions. Zhou Hong felt the aura, and his eyes were filled with shock. What a strong sword aura. This guy, is he also a sword cultivator? Whoosh, whoosh. At this moment, the sword aura spread out, and the scattered armor fragments, stones, dust, and even branches and leaves on the ground were touched, as if they were shrouded by some kind of power, and then slowly floated up. What's going on? Why are all the things on the ground floating up? What does this have to do with swordsmanship? The cultivator was dumbfounded. Sword cultivators cultivated the sword, so why would the sharp sword aura interfere with grass and trees? Swoosh. Jun Changshao gently raised the true yang sword, and the floating fragments, stones, and other things flew over, instantly forming cloth-like rays of light in midair. Zhou Hong exclaimed. 10,000 swords returned second form, all things as swords. There were not many powerful sword techniques in the sect of all times, and there were only two that could be used to cultivate. One was the Ling Jian divine technique, and the other was 10,000 swords return. Zhou Hong had always been meditating on the Ling Jian divine technique, and rarely meditated on 10,000 swords return, because it was already very difficult to cultivate a profound sword technique to the extreme. So why would he be in the mood to cultivate two at the same time? Swoosh, swoosh. Dense sword lights flew over like locusts. Although the martial artists were far enough away, seeing the flowing light enveloped by sword aura, they all had goosebumps. This number, this strength. If they attacked them, they would definitely be pierced into sieves. Swoosh, swoosh. The battlefield spirits did not realize how terrifying the dense sword lights were, and they still gathered all kinds of energy to attack. Jun Changshao said coldly, "This is the first time I've used all things as swords, and today, I'll use you as a sacrifice to the heavens." Swish, swish, swish. Swish, 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 swish. Thousands of flowing light burst out, and instantly, fine sword marks were left in the air. Ding, 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 ding. In an instant, countless sword lights pierced through, and the crisp sound was like a beautiful melody. The martial artists gradually opened their mouths, because they saw with their own eyes how close to 1,000 armored battlefield spirits were pierced into sieves. The scene was too beautiful, too spectacular. Thud, thud. One by one, the battlefield spirits fell to the ground, riddled with holes. The martial artists' expressions were still dull. Previously, Zhou Hong had killed hundreds with one sword, which had already shocked them. Now that Jun Changshao had killed thousands, it must have deeply shocked their minds and souls again. Damn it! Too scary. If they were to be spectators in the future, they must prepare pills to protect their hearts. Chapter 1033. Whether all things as swords was strong, or not could be seen from the thousands of battlefield spirits that were killed. Jun Changshao was also very surprised. Before he broke through, he had been stuck at the level of 10,000 swords as one. It was only after he consumed the Sword Dao aptitude fluid, and broke through to Sword Saint that he understood the second move, all things as swords. He didn't expect that when he used it, the effect would be so explosive. Interesting. Jun Changshao's eyes were burning. The sword aura in his body spread out again, spreading to a further area. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Rocks, trees, and dirt were enveloped. They floated up and flew over, then hung behind him like indestructible swords. Again! Everyone exclaimed. Such a powerful sword technique should consume a lot of energy, but he could actually use it twice in a row. Swoosh! 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 Thousands of swords flew together, and the light illuminated the world. Ding ding ding! Ding 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 ding! After a series of crazy attacks, hundreds of Earth battlefield spirits were pierced, then fell down after losing their minds. The spectating martial artists were expressionless. At this moment, they really didn't have any actions to show off Jun Changxiao's powerful killing. After killing a yellow battlefield spirit, Yi Xingqian looked back at the patriarch, who was standing upright like a sharp sword, and thought to himself, if he enters the emperor tier, he should be able to shatter the void. Since ancient times, there were very few experts in the falling star continent who could shatter the void. Even the Night Emperor in his previous life didn't do it. For him to have such an evaluation, it showed that Jun Changxiao was really strong. Swoosh! The sword light flashed again, as if it could pierce through heaven and earth. Bang! 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 The battlefield spirits, no matter how high their levels were all harvested like lowly weeds. Then they fell down with their heads cut off. The battle that originally belonged to the Sect of all times became a stage for Jun Changxiao to perform alone after he burst out. Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others tried their best to cooperate. They either widened their eyes or opened their mouths. Their eyes were full of worship for the patriarch. Boom! Boom! The Purple King was deeply provoked by Jun Changxiao. His majestic demonic aura erupted, and he engaged in an unprecedentedly intense battle with the Heaven Battlefield Spectre. That guy was so strong, how could he fall below him? Kill! Kill! After a short while, Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others left the spectator mode and brandished their weapons and martial arts techniques to attack the battlefield specters. At this moment, although the Sect of all times had fewer people, their momentum had already gained the upper hand. Boom! 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 All kinds of martial skills exploded in midair, and the battlefield ghosts fell down one after another. Too monstrous. Too perverted. The spectating martial artists who had witnessed the entire battle were thoroughly shocked. In their eyes, everyone in the Sect of all times was no longer human. They had all transformed into demons. Boom! Boom! At this moment Li Qingyang, who was surrounded by enemies from all sides, was blasted down by more than 10 Xian-grade battlefield specters. After stabilizing his body, he immediately spat out blood. With the support of his equipment, he should have been safe and sound. However, his spirit energy was severely depleted, and he was unable to hold on in the end. Swish! Swish! More than 20 yellow-grade battlefield specters pressed down from the left and right. With Li Qingyang's current injuries, it was equivalent to him not having any combat ability. If his fellow Sect members did not help him in time, he would definitely die on the battlefield. Huff huff. Huff huff huff. All kinds of energy pressed down from above. Finally, a disciple of the Sect of all times is going to die on the battlefield. The spectating martial artists felt that this situation was very normal. They had the same thoughts as some readers. With dozens of people fighting against thousands, it would be nonsense if there were no sacrifices. Or perhaps there was some kind of dirty deal. Huff huff. The various kinds of energy pressed down on Li Qingyang's black hair, and a smile hung on his slightly pale face. He's smiling? The martial artists were stunned. Swish! At this moment, Li Qingyang waved his left hand, and a pill appeared between his fingers. Then, he threw it into his mouth without hesitation. The damaged meridians instantly recovered, and the spirit energy in his spirit core was also full. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. With the support of spirit energy, the heavenly slaughter lightning mark flashed with lightning again. All the martial artists were dumbfounded. The Sect of all time's disciple was clearly seriously injured, and had lost his combat ability. Why did he suddenly seem to have recovered, and even have such a strong fighting spirit? Swish! Li Qingyang got up and flew over. The heavenly slaughter lightning mark tore through space, forming a sword aura with electric arcs. It domineeringly destroyed all kinds of energy, and then killed all the battlefield specters on both sides. Not human. Definitely not human. All the martial artists' faces were filled with disbelief. It was understandable that one's potential was suddenly stimulated when he was seriously injured. However, Li Qingyang's ruddy complexion and clean and swift movements were not stimulated at all. It was completely nothing. Boom. Boom. The battle continued, and the intensity was still increasing. Although Li Fei, Seven Fields, and the others had the support of their equipment, they did not have an endless supply of spirit energy. Therefore, they were all injured after being depleted, but after taking healing pills, they were able to fight again in perfect condition. In terms of numbers, the sect of all times did not have the advantage. However, they were equipped with superior grade healing pills. Not only could they recover from the brink of death in an instant, but they could also restore depleted spirit energy. It was equivalent to having 2 lives. It was normal to die on the battlefield. However, Jun Changshao had made preparations before entering the dimensional battlefield. Unless it was an extremely bad and irreversible situation, it was impossible to kill the sect of all time's disciples. Of course, superior grade healing pills were not invincible. They could only be effective after taking 1 a day. Therefore, the disciples who had taken them still had the possibility of dying, but they probably could not wait until then. In order to eliminate this possibility, Jun Changshao fully unleashed the power of his sword arts. The 2 weapons seemed to have turned into the scythe of the Grim Reaper, crazily harvesting the battlefield specters. Their numbers were reduced by hundreds. Swish, swish, swish. Swish, swish, swish. The sword intent that filled the sky exploded in midair, tearing through space and attacking. The battlefield specters did not even put up a fight before they turned into fragments and fell to the ground. After a while, more than 4,000 corpses were scattered outside the Spirit Origin Continent stronghold. The ones with the heaviest casualties were at the Mystic and Earth levels. Another sky battlefield specter was held back by the Purple King, and the core force was slaughtered by Jun Changshao. Therefore, although there were still a few hundred yellow-level specters left, they could no longer pose any real threat to the sect of all time's disciples. Every disciple was his treasure. Naturally, he would not allow any of them to die. Whoosh! Jun Changshao sheathed his sword and stood in midair. He had already eliminated most of the battlefield specters that posed a threat. Naturally, he would leave the rest to the disciples to fight to their heart's content. Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others did not disappoint him. All kinds of energy circulated crazily, and they fought brilliantly. Boom! At this moment, the Purple King was blasted away by the sky battlefield specter. After he stabilized his body, he turned around and roared at Jun Changshao. Hurry up and help! With his current strength, he could only barely hold it back. Swish! Jun Changshao flew over quickly, and the true Yang sword and dragon tooth blade appeared again. Without the support of various weapons and equipment, Gosheng could not defeat the sky battlefield specter with just his fists. After all, it was at least comparable to Wu Sheng's great perfection. Boom! Boom! The light of the sword and saber exploded, filling half of the sky. Under the suppression of absolute equipment, although the battlefield specter resisted many attacks, its armor was still shattered in the end, and it collapsed into the sky like its previous companion. With the death of 2 sky battlefield specters, the punishment from the upper realm was basically over. The remaining yellow-level specters would definitely be slowly exhausted by the sect of all time's disciples until they died. Valley Master. In the stronghold, an elder said with trembling hands, Jun Patriarch and his disciples are too scary. Kujinan was silent. He was still in a high state of shock. When 5,000 battlefield specters appeared, he was already in despair, and was even prepared to die in battle. However, when Jun Changshao brought people to rescue him, and killed nearly 90% of the enemies, he realized that he and the stronghold had escaped danger. Great favor. Definitely great favor. Boom. Boom. The battle outside the stronghold was still ongoing. After fighting for half an hour, Yi Xingchen killed the last battlefield specter, and the small-scale armed melee officially came to an end. Chapter 1034. Under Jun Changshao's leadership, 5,000 battlefield specters were annihilated by the Sect of all times. The shock it caused was so great that all the martial artists stood in the distance dumbfounded. When they came, they were sure that the Lingyuan continent would be flattened. However, they did not expect such an outcome. In particular, Jun Changxiao's performance made the martial artists realize that even if he didn't have a weapon engraved with words, he still had the strength to kill without restraint. That's terrifying. Who would dare to provoke such an opponent? The martial artists' fear of Jun Changxiao and the Sect of all times grew stronger. Valley Master. An elder of the 100 Leaves Valley was stunned for a long time before he slowly said, The crisis is over. Our base is safe. When he spoke, one could clearly feel that his voice and hands were trembling to varying degrees. Safe. Safe. Kujinen closed her eyes and tried her best to calm her turbulent state of mind. Valley Master Ke, Jun Changxiao said telepathically. Because of the falling star continent, the Lingyuan continent was punished by the upper realm. Jun is deeply sorry. Kujinen hurriedly cupped her hands and said, Jun Patriarch, you're too kind. It was undeniable that they were punished by the upper realm, because they cooperated with the falling star continent to play dead. However, they also received 200,000 hexagram stones. Therefore, if there were any problems in the future, they should bear it alone. Jun Changxiao bringing reinforcements was definitely a huge favor. The martial artists in the distant existential planes were slapped in the face. Most of them thought that the falling star continent sent reinforcements to take advantage of the situation. They did not expect it to be reinforcements. The two existential planes had fought crazily in the slaughterhouse. Their relationship should be like fire and water. How could they still come to help? At this thought, many martial artists were depressed again. The 100 Leaves Valley Master, upper echelons and disciples had died in battle. Why were they still alive and kicking? There were too many questions. Everyone was dumbfounded. Jun Changxiao and Kujinen naturally would not take the initiative to talk about these things. Therefore, it was destined to become an unsolved mystery of the dimensional battlefield. Whoosh! Shua! Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others landed on the ground and collected the fragments of the armor. Although the equipment was destroyed, the material was special, so it was definitely worth smelting and forging new equipment. To be able to loot crates to such an extent, it was truly insane. In this battle, Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others fought until their faces were weak and their breathing was rapid. But it was also very satisfying and very exciting. If he could fight every once in a while, his improvement in martial arts would definitely be very significant. After taking away all the recyclable equipment fragments, Jun Changxiao turned to look at the cultivators who were watching from afar and said, You've seen a great show. Don't you want to reward me? Everyone's expressions changed slightly. Of course, Jun Changxiao said. Not much, just a few kilograms of ore per person. Shua. Li Qingyang cooperated and took out the wooden board that had appeared outside the arena before. There were still many ores on it. Huff huff. The Purple King had already appeared in the area with the most cultivators. He crossed his arms in front of his chest and stared with a pair of big eyes. Demonic aura erupted from his body. A threat. A blatant threat. The cultivators who were watching the show immediately regretted it. When the battle was already decided, why didn't they want to run away as soon as possible? Sigh. A cultivator shook his head and then took out a few kilograms of ore. The strength that Jun Changxiao and the Sect of all times had just displayed had deeply shocked him. Naturally, he did not dare to be angry and could only accept the fact that he had been extorted. With someone taking the lead, the others also took out their ores and reluctantly threw them all over. The punishment of the Lingyuan continent had attracted at least 70,000 to 80,000 cultivators. A few kilograms of ore per person was also a huge sum. It's undoubtedly great to be able to extort some more ores before I leave, Jun Changxiao said to himself. The system seized the opportunity and said, The host finally admitted that this is extortion. A moment later, the tens of thousands of cultivators present threw all their ores over. Although they were very depressed, there were not many of them, so they did not feel that bad. Some people even comforted themselves. Witnessing a battle between sky-level cultivators, some ores seemed to be worth it. Valley Master Ke, after putting everything into the space ring, Jun Changshao cupped his hands and said, Jun will take his leave first. Swoosh. Swoosh. Before he finished speaking, the open space outside the stronghold flashed with colorful lights. One by one, the battlefield spirits appeared again. Why are they here again? The cultivators who were about to leave stopped in their tracks. Their eyes were filled with astonishment. Jun Changshao was also very surprised. Normally, after eliminating the battlefield spirits, even if they came again, they would have to wait until the next day. Why did another batch appear after they had just eliminated one? Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The streams of light flashed frequently. The number of battlefield spirits appeared more and more. Soon, it broke through from a few thousand to 10,000. They lined up neatly in a square formation like a solemn army. Oh my God! There are even more than before. Judging from their aura, they are all at the Earth mystic level. Everyone was shocked. Previously, there were thousands of battlefield spirits, and many of them were at the yellow level. Now not only were there more of them, but they were all at the mystic level and above. This was a bit shocking. Ko Jin-nan, who had just calmed down, saw the most terrifying formation, and the corner of her mouth twitched. The Lingyuan continent did violate the rules, but one punishment was not enough. Do they have to do it again? The Falling Star continent violated the rules in the slaughterhouse field. They are punished as a warning to others. A deep and old voice sounded in the sky. Ko Jin-nan almost vomited blood when she heard that. The Falling Star continent violated the rules. The battlefield spirits should be at the Falling Star continent's stronghold. Why did they send them to her doorstep? Heh. Jun Changshao looked at the 10,000 battlefield spirits, whose strength was at the mystic level at the very least, and said with a smile, This formation is quite strong. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others took out their weapons and got ready for battle. However, they were a little nervous. After all, the battlefield spirits were very strong, and there were a lot of them. Jun Changshao also knew that the disciples had already fought once. If they had to fight a second time, it would not bode well for them. So he snapped his fingers and said, Babies, take out your trump cards. Swoosh, swoosh. Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others put all kinds of weapons into the infinite space ring. Then, they carried the magically modified vacuum cleaner on their backs, and held the vacuum nozzle in one hand. Their eyes were shining with fighting spirit. Last time, when he overflowed with contribution points, Go Sheng bought a lot of equipment and magically modified vacuum cleaners, so that the disciples could use them when they encountered something unclean. This was the real trump card. Just now, the 5,000 battlefield spirits were like experience bags. If they really wanted to end it quickly, they could just use the vacuum cleaner. Swoosh. Jun Changshao waved one hand, and instantly carried 2 magically modified vacuum cleaners on his back. He held the vacuum nozzle in each hand and grinned. Let's have some fun. Ding. Side mission triggered. A side mission at this time must be a free point again. Jun Changshao hurriedly opened the data panel. However, after seeing the mission, his face changed drastically. He then put the vacuum cleaner back into the infinite space ring and said in a deep voice, All of you back off. Leave this trash to me. Chapter 1035. Just as he was about to fight with the new battlefield spirits, a side mission suddenly appeared. According to his past experience, Jun Changshao judged that it might be related to the former. As expected, the mission was related to the battlefield spirits, and they had to be destroyed. However, there were additional conditions. The battlefield spirits that appeared had to be dealt with by the host alone, and the time limit was 10 minutes. In other words, this was not only a time-limited mission, but it also required Jun Changshao to solve it personally. The upper echelons and disciples of the sect of all times were not allowed to participate. Jun Changshao kept the modified vacuum cleaner and ordered the disciples to retreat, facing the 10,000 battlefield spirits alone. Alone? So cruel? All the martial artists widened their eyes. With so many battlefield spirits, the weakest one was at least at the Xian level. To fight alone unless that guy, Buzz, The space trembled slightly. A pocket-sized knife appeared between Jun Changxiao's fingers out of thin air. It's coming, hard to keep the blade. Facing so many battlefield spirits, and having to deal with them within 10 minutes, Jun Changxiao could only use his strongest trump card. He could see it too. This mission with a time limit and restrictions was completely forcing him to use an opening talisman. Since that was the case, in order to complete the mission and obtain contribution points, he would do as he wished. The system was speechless. If you don't use this trump card, do you really think the vacuum cleaner can deal with it? Jun Changxiao was silent. If the disciples were all at the sage level, dozens of them might be able to get rid of them with the vacuum cleaner, but many of them had just entered Wu Huang. If they really fought with 10,000 Xiandi level, it was hard to say if they could even get close. So, once it was useless, he would still have to unseal hard to keep the blade. From the looks of it, Jun Changxiao comforted himself. Using an opening talisman is definitely a profit. The system complained. I've never seen the host say that he was at a loss. The patriarch took out the knife again. Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji and the others locked their gazes on hard to keep the blade. They had seen this item before, and deeply knew how powerful it was. Seeing it again today, they immediately began to fantasize. The Purple King frowned. Previously, when they were fighting for the opportunity, this guy had used it once. Then, he had killed over 20,000 cultivators in front of him. That saber has appeared. The expressions on the faces of many martial artists became interesting. The memories of the insane slaughter sealed in the depths of his heart instantly surged into his sea of consciousness. Gulp, gulp. All of the martial artists who had been fortunate enough to witness Jun Changxiao's crazy slaughter all gulped. Then they subconsciously retreated far away, obviously worried that they would be accidentally injured. Although the others didn't know the truth, seeing that everyone had retreated, they followed with stunned expressions. Big brother, did Jun Changxiao take out a toy knife? This isn't a toy knife. This is the scythe used by the Grim Reaper in Hell. Death God's scythe. Previously, Jun Changxiao was using it to fight for the opportunity to break out of the ground. He was crazily slaughtering people. When that martial artist heard this, his eyes immediately widened. The others retreated even faster. At least half of the tens of thousands of martial artists present did not witness what had happened earlier, but they had all heard about it. In particular, they knew that Jun Changxiao had a weapon that could kill people like chopping vegetables. It turned out that this was the weapon that had slaughtered tens of thousands of people, but it was too small. Swoosh. Just as everyone was questioning, Jun Changxiao's fingers were on the hilt of the saber. His spiritual thoughts had already entered the spatial ring, and he pinched an opening talisman. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The eyes of the tens of thousands of neatly arranged battlefield specters flickered as they woke up from their slumber. A powerful wave of air whistled out. Although these low-level creatures created by the upper realm were powerful, they did not know how to use their aura. Otherwise, if they were real powerhouses, their aura alone would be able to intimidate half of the sky. Swoosh, swoosh. The battlefield specters drew their weapons, gathered their strength, and charged toward Jun Changxiao. Even if the tens of thousands of mystic earth level did not release their auras, when they moved together, it could be said that their momentum was great. When the martial artists saw such a valiant scene, their faces changed in shock. With so many battlefield specters and such terrifying strength, the first-tier martial artists would only be abused, right? Swoosh, swoosh. Countless streams of light flew over from high and low altitude. The light of the saber and the light of the sword converged, instantly producing a gorgeous luster. Jun Changxiao stood proudly. The camera panned to his back, and he looked like he was holding back 10,000 men. Whoosh whoosh, whoosh whoosh whoosh. Before the battlefield specters could attack, the energy waves that erupted rushed over first. Because there were too many of them, and they were too dense, the space began to distort. The expressions of Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others who were standing behind changed slightly. This kind of power, this kind of aura, even if they had vacuum cleaners, they would not be able to contend against it. Bankai. Suddenly Jun Changxiao, who was standing in front, pinched the hilt of his saber with 2 fingers, bent his body slightly, and said in a cold voice, "Raging 9 heavens slash." Clang, the hard blade was unsheathed, and the light suddenly burst out. The martial artists from various planes found it difficult to open their eyes because of the sudden light. Some even raised their arms to block it. After the light dissipated, they all focused and opened their eyes while holding their breaths. They saw a 5-foot-long, 6-inch-wide greatsword appear in Jun Changxiao's hand out of thin air. Heaven, earth, thunder, wind, water, fire, mountain, lake. Qian Kuan Kin Li Zhen Jin Sun Dui. On both sides of the sword, there were 8 characters engraved on each side, emitting a mysterious power from the east. It appeared, the weapon that had slaughtered more than 20,000 martial artists from various planes. Whoosh whoosh, whoosh whoosh. At this moment, hundreds of battlefield specters had already rushed over. They all raised their sabers and swords and slashed, filling the sky with light that tore through space and pressed down. Jun Changxiao raised his head gently. His black hair was blown away, and his eyes flashed coldly. Buzz! Buzz! All kinds of saber and sword light seemed to be frozen in midair by some kind of power. It stopped. What's going on? It was not only the saber and sword power that stopped, but also the hundreds of battlefield specters rushing over. Although their eyes flashed with a dim light, they were frozen in midair in various flying postures. Swoosh! Swoosh! At this moment, Jun Changxiao flew over with hard-to-withdraw saber, slashing continuously in the void. Then the characters of heaven, earth, thunder, and so on appeared, until the last DUI character gathered in midair. The 16 characters suddenly turned into sword light that filled the sky, and attacked the frozen battlefield specters. Boom 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 boom. Under the impact of the violent power, the armor shattered into pieces. Swish swish swish. Jun Changxiao did not stop there. Holding hard-to-withdraw saber, he rushed over again. The sword light flashed in the crowd and then extinguished again, filling the sky with skulls and battle helmets. The martial artists from various planes stared with their eyes wide open. In a short time, thousands of battlefield specters had been slaughtered, and they were all frozen in midair like weeds, waiting for that guy to harvest. Swoosh! 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 The sword light flashed frequently, and headless armors hung in midair. Swish! Suddenly, Jun Changxiao traveled through space and appeared behind the battlefield specters. Hard-to-withdraw saber was in a natural drooping position, and the 16 characters engraved on the sword flashed with a dazzling light. Plop! Plop! The binding force that existed in midair dissipated, and the 10,000 battlefield specters that had their battle helmets cut off instantly fell down like headless flies. From the time he attacked to the time he killed them all, it had not even been a minute. When the martial artists from various planes witnessed this from afar, none of the battlefield specters were spared and fell to the ground. Their souls were almost scared out of their wits. Everyone. Jun Changxiao turned his head and said, "You've seen another great show. You didn't lose out this time, right?" Everyone's expression changed again and again. However, after witnessing that guy take out a terrifying weapon and instantly kill 10,000 mystic Earth-level battlefield specters, giving them a few kilograms of, or did not seem to be a loss at all. Chapter 1036. What was the point of watching a show in a martial arts world? Of course, it was to watch the excitement and the special effects. After watching 2 great shows in a row, the martial artists instantly felt that it was worth it to spend a few kilograms of ores. Especially when Jun Changxiao brought out that terrifying weapon and wiped out 10,000 battlefield specters in a very short time. It was quite shocking, and a super strong visual impact. This was worth it, definitely worth it. Seeing the relieved expressions on everyone's faces, Jun Changxiao thought to himself, "Am I blackmailing them?" The system was silent. It was obviously blackmailing and threatening, but in the end, it made the martial artists feel that it was worth it. It was a little shameless. Swoosh! Swoosh! Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others flew down after showing off in the Patriarch, and put the armor and other equipment worn by the battlefield specters into their space rings. Previously it was 5,000, now it was 10,000. There were all kinds of equipment fragments, and even complete ones. Valley Master Ke. Jun Changshao turned around and cupped his hands. This matter is over. Jun will take his leave first. Ke Nan, who was in shock, forgot to salute. She stared blankly as he left with the Sect of all times. The 2 consecutive punishments from the upper realm and the battlefield specters sent out were all easily destroyed. This scene would be imprinted in the hearts of the spectators. Comfortable. Jun Changshao, who had returned to the Falling Star Continent stronghold, was smiling. After destroying the second batch of battlefield specters, the hidden mission was completed. He was rewarded with another 20,000 contribution points and 2 experience talismans. The matter of the dimensional battlefield was basically over. Before he left, the upper realm even gave him experience packs. This was too good for him. My lord. In the illusory space, the hunchbacked old man said in disbelief. That guy's weapon is a little strong. The woman shrouded in clouds murmured. I strictly followed the rules for this punishment, but I still can't do anything to the Falling Star Continent. The Realm Hall will definitely have nothing to say. The previous punishments were all experience packs. This time, they directly sent out 10,000 high-level battlefield specters. It could be said that the difficulty had increased from easy to hell. My lord, the hunchbacked old man said with a solemn expression. That guy called Jun Changshao is not simple. Perhaps in the future. The misty woman interrupted. There are many people in the mortal world who are not simple. Only those who survive and achieve something can be considered successful. Let's go. Let's go back. Yes. The 2 of them silently disappeared into the boundless void. At the Starfall Continent stronghold. After Jun Changshao flew in, he put away the unstoppable blade. Only then did he raise his sleeve to wipe away the beads of sweat that were deep on his forehead. After such a huge massacre, the spiritual energy in his body was consumed at an extremely fast rate. If not for the fact that his realm had increased and his foundation was good, he would have collapsed to the ground from exhaustion. Activating the second form of Unstoppable Saber would weaken the user for 2 hours and prevent them from using their psionic energy for a month. Therefore, when Go Sheng sheathed the saber, he became weak again. It's fine, it's fine. Jun Changshao thought. I can go to the space-time secret realm to recover. All disciples, return to the Sect of all times. Yes, the mission of the Falling Star Continent had been completed. Apart from occasional battles, there was no point in staying here for long periods of time. However, before leaving, Jun Changshao went to the battlefield merit shop and exchanged all his merit points for condensing core pills and various martial arts techniques. Although condensing core pills were not as effective as chi gathering pills, at least they could be taken at the same time to improve the effect. It was not bad to put them in the pill machine for disciples to exchange. As for the various martial arts techniques, they could be used to make up the numbers and exchanged for awesome martial arts techniques from the Technique Pavilion. After everything was done, Jun Changshao stopped in front of the portal. He looked back at the dark sky and the large city-level stronghold that he had worked so hard to build and said, I will come here occasionally to take a look. Shwa. He disappeared in an instant. If the martial artists saw this, they would definitely let out a sigh of relief, because this terrifying demon was finally gone. Finally, he no longer put his mind on the battlefield. They would no longer have to live in fear in the future. On an ancient altar filled with vines and leaves, a white-haired old man knelt on the ground holding a cane, as if he was praying. Suddenly, a pattern similar to the 5 elements and the 8 trigrams flashed in front of him. The white-haired old man opened his eyes and saw the script on it. He was shocked and said, a sign of disaster. The camera extended out from the altar, and then looked down. It was an island surrounded by the endless sea. In the sea far, far away, a lone boat was moving forward with difficulty. You too. The man on the boat smiled and said, we have successfully passed the fierce wind area. As long as we keep going east, we will reach the East Sea Fishery State in 2 months. Sitting in the cabin, Yuan Gongzi looked at the scenery outside and said to himself, as long as we can get away from that guy, it doesn't matter even if we sail for 2 years. In the Sect of all times. After Jun Changshao, who was in a weakened state, came back, he did not enter the time and space secret realm immediately. Instead, he asked about the recent events in the Jianghu. Li Luoqiu said, 2,000 experts who went to the parallel dimension battlefield returned safely. The whole continent is in an uproar. As expected, Jun Changshao said. But, Li Luoqiu said rather speechlessly, the big families in all the provinces and counties are in internal strife. The reason is that many experts who went to the battlefield passed the position of family leader to their children. Someone is plotting to usurp the position. Jun Changshao was also speechless. Besides, Li Luoqiu said, many experts' descendants have begun to let themselves go without the supervision of their masters. They drink and have fun all day long, and don't think about improving themselves. In that case, Jun Changshao said, this trip to the parallel dimension battlefield made many experts understand a lot of things. By the way, Li Luoqiu said, little Mo has broken through to Wu Huang. This is good news, Go Sheng said with a smile. It also means that the Taishan Shengzong has some ability. Li Luoqiu said again, the bad news is that the senior members of the Taishan Shengzong have returned from the parallel dimension battlefield. I'm afraid it will be difficult for little Mo to become an elder. Tell him, Jun Changshao said. If there's no other way, then come back. With the sect of all times' current strength, they could directly bring people to seek justice. Thus, Su Xiaoma continuing to be a spy was meaningless. Moreover, that Fang Lingyu had humiliated his disciple. Thus, no matter what kind of conflict he had with Lu Qianqian, he had to make arrangements. Taishan Shengzong. A few days ago, Su Xiaoma had come out of seclusion from the spirit pagoda and was sitting cross-legged in his room. He had already received the news that the patriarch had told him not to force himself and that he should go back when it was time. At this moment, he was in a dilemma. Should he return to the sect of all times? No, Su Xiaoma said to himself. I haven't become an elder yet. If I go back like this, how can I face my fellow disciples? Patriarch, Li Luoqiu said, little Mo sent a message. She plans to continue undercover. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, this kid is addicted to the undercover game and can't extricate himself. Since Su Xiaoma was willing to continue undercover, he certainly wouldn't object. After all, the other party was able to get to the top of the Taishan Shengzong, which proved that he was a good leader. Bah, the system said. Patriarch, Li Luoqiu said, a large number of floating bottles have appeared on the coast of Southeast Sher Province. They're all letters for help written by Master Fan, and they're all very urgent. Very urgent. Jun Changshao interlocked his fingers and said to himself, I obtained a lot of equipment fragments from the battlefield ghosts. Because they don't belong to the Or category, it's difficult to forge them in the smithy. If I give them to Master Fan, he should be able to turn them into treasures, right? The system said, if you want to go to the East Sea Fishery Province, then go. Do you have to find an excuse for yourself? Jun Changshao said seriously, with an excuse, I have a good reason to go. Chapter 1037. The Falling Star Continent was in chaos. That was because the 2,000 experts who had entered the dimensional battlefield had returned. Slap. Slapping sounds could be heard from a certain family's courtyard. The young man who had just succeeded the family had covered his right cheek and retreated. A scarf was still on his forehead, and his eyes were filled with fear. Father, you're still alive? There were 10 beautiful women in the room, and they were all in a state of panic at the moment. The original family head, who had just returned, raised one hand. Because he had used too much strength, his palm was aching, but his heart was hurting even more. For the Falling Star Continent, he had resolutely entered the dimensional battlefield and passed the position of family head to his son. He had never thought that when he returned in high spirits, his son would be blindfolded and playing hide and seek with the beauties. You, the original family head scolded. You've disappointed me. Father. The young man knelt on the ground and cried bitterly. I was wrong, I was wrong. It was normal for a son to be useless and only know how to play. Many family heads had returned, and the heirs they had arranged in advance were either killed or pushed down. and the power fell into the hands of the higher-ups. Family head, let me explain. Boom! In a certain family's hall, an elder who had illegally obtained the power of the family for less than half a month was killed on the spot by the returning family head. The surrounding higher-ups were all trembling. This kind of thing was rare. After many experts entered the planar battlefield, their descendants or disciples would all work hard to strengthen their families and forces, and they would succeed them. Of course, when the first batch of cultivators returned and appeared in front of them, they would definitely be stunned and would take a long time to recover. Wasn't the dimensional battlefield extremely terrifying? Father Master had gone in for a few months. Why had he returned safe and sound? Disciple. On a certain mountain peak, an elder said with a serious expression, I have to thank June Patriarch. If not for him, I would have turned into a pile of bones. June Patriarch? The disciple was puzzled. Middle State Altar. The high priest was walking back and forth. From the smile on his face, he should be very excited. The first batch of 2,000 cultivators had all returned safe and sound. Not only was this unexpected, but it was also a joyous occasion. High Priest. City Lord Han said, if it weren't for June Patriarch, the falling star continent would have been meat on the chopping block once we entered the battlefield. All the experts who returned, including the upper echelons of the profound sacred sect, approved of Jun Changshao. The high priest had basically figured out what was going on. With a grave expression he said, June Patriarch's actions have undoubtedly benefited the entire Starfall continent. He should be given a high commendation. He had naturally heard of Jun Changshao from the sect of all times, but he had never expected that this person would enter the dimensional battlefield first and build a stronghold of such scale. He had even killed so many experts there that they trembled in fear. City Lord Han said, based on my understanding of June Patriarch, it would be better to give him a natural spirit stone than a formal recognition. If Jun Changshao was present, he would definitely give him a big hug and say, old bro, you understand me. That works too, the high priest said. None of the cultivators sent by the falling star continent had died, and they had successfully completed the mission given by the upper realm. Their overall strength had not weakened at all. It was reasonable to reward them with natural spirit stones. June Patriarch is a god. He saved the falling star continent. He's our hero. Hero. Great hero. As the cultivators who returned spread the news of Jun Changshao on the battlefield, the entire continent knew about it and discussed it crazily. For a moment, the sect of all times, which had been keeping a low profile for some time, became a hot topic once again. On that day, Wuxia received the news and reported back. The entire continent is praising Patriarch and the sect. They're treating them as great heroes who saved the world. That's normal. Jun Changshao was not surprised. If it were not for him, the 2,000 cultivators from the falling star continent would have been sent to their deaths. It was the same for the second and third batches. He had helped them solve everything and ensured that there were no casualties. They would be grateful. Sigh. Jun Changshao said gloomily, my dream is to be a great villain. Why did I save the world and become a great hero worshipped by the world? Wuxia was silent. She could feel the smugness in Patriarch's tone. Whoosh! With a thought, Jun Changshao pulled out the shop interface. Helping the Lingyuan continent resolve a crisis, completing a hidden mission and a side mission. More than 40,000 contribution points must be spent within 24 hours. Gosheng rubbed his hands and said, I haven't visited the shop for a long time. I'm a little nervous. With a thought, he pulled down the mid-level shop, and a new item appeared. Perhaps because he had saved the world, his luck was good. He obtained a few martial arts of a decent level, so he bought them and automatically matched them with the sect's techniques. A sect must not only have a few powerful martial arts techniques, but also many martial arts techniques of different levels. Only then could the disciples cultivate and achieve 100 flowers bloom. EQ Elixir? Jun Changshao's eyes locked on the last column, and then clicked on the introduction. The effect was to increase EQ. The price was 1,000 contribution points. If it can increase IQ, I will buy it without hesitation, even if it costs 10,000 contribution points. Increasing EQ. Then it's meaningless. Whoosh. The shop was pulled down and a new item appeared. System. In fact, it very much advised the host to buy EQ elixir. But this guy refreshed too quickly, and it didn't have time to say anything. Sigh. The system said, continue to be alone. Once an item was refreshed and not sold, as long as it was replaced again, the probability of it appearing would be very small. What a joke, Jun Changshao said unhappily. My EQ still needs to be improved? The system said in a bad mood. It's not that the host doesn't need to improve, but even if you buy 999 bottles, it might not be improved. Buddy, your words are seriously hurtful. Half an hour later, Jun Changshao spent all the 40,000 contribution points that he had overflowed. His current contribution points were still at 700,007,0000. This guy had a serious obsessive-compulsive disorder. If he didn't increase the data to just the right amount, he would feel uncomfortable. 40,000 contribution points exchanged for a lot of martial arts of different levels. Swords, sabers, spears, swords, staffs, palms, fists, legs, and so on. Of course, he also bought a lot of elixirs and equipment recipes. Because the effects weren't too abnormal, the author was too lazy to explain them one by one. Whoosh! Jun Changshao stretched, and then set off for the space-time secret realm. 3 days later, he walked out in high spirits. There are still 4 experience talismans left. I hope they can help me increase by 2 or 3 levels. Dream on. Pa, 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 pa. After crushing the 4 experience talismans, Jun Changshao's spiritual energy in the 2 spiritual cores in his body suddenly increased by a lot, but his level was still at the level of a first-grade sword and martial saint. No way, he said with a face of collapse. 2 emperor level can increase by 1 level, but 4 saint level can't increase by 1 level. The system said. After all, there's still a half-step Wusheng level in between. Jun Changshao walked out with a depressed face. Patriarch. Li Luochio walked over and said solemnly, Master Fan's message in a bottle is here again. It's still asking for help, and it's still very urgent. Okay, Jun Changshao said. Since it's so urgent, I'll go to the East Sea Fishery Province tomorrow. Li Luochio was speechless. Did he think the East Sea Fishery Province was the West Sea Fishery Province? Did he just go there to visit them? Patriarch. Li Luochio said with unusual seriousness. The East Sea Fishery Province is far away from the continent, and there's also the Endless Sea. I'm afraid it'll be very dangerous if you rush there. Jun Changshao took out the pocket-sized ancient warship and said with a smile. With this, I don't have to worry about going out. For more, 1 more, 12 more. Chapter 1038. Jun Changshao hadn't used the ancient warship he got from the plain battlefield on the Starfall continent yet, so he would definitely use it if he went to the East Sea Fishery State. The ship was powered by high-level spirit stones, so it would be very fast. Besides, it was also at the heaven level, so its defense was very strong. Even if the sea was full of dangers, it should be able to pass through easily. It's decided, Jun Changshao said to himself. I'll set off tomorrow. He was in such a hurry, because Master Fan repeatedly told him that it was related to the survival of the continent, so he had to go there as soon as possible to investigate the matter. Go Sheng was not so enthusiastic, because he was going to save people. He was mainly worried about the soul race in the distant East Sea Fishery State. If it possessed someone else like Dai Lu, and relied on the devouring power to grow, it would definitely be a disaster. The system praised. It's a blessing for the Starfall continent that the host thinks so. Besides, Jun Changshao held his chin and said, there may be more resources in the overseas states. If we can find a few undiscovered spirit stone veins, this trip will be worth it. The system was speechless. Was this guy going to save the people in distress, or was he going to harm them? Patriarch. Li Qingyang and Xiao Ziji walked in and said, I'm willing to go to the East Sea Fishery State with you. Okay, Jun Changshao agreed. The East Sea Fishery State and the 9 provinces had been separated for tens of thousands of years, and they rarely interacted with each other. They should have a unique culture. Taking the disciples there could broaden their knowledge. Patriarch Yi Xingchen walked in from outside and said, I'm going too. Get ready. Jun Changshao said, we'll set off tomorrow after the meal on the road. Master. Page stood outside the hall and said weakly, can I go with you? No problem. Thank you, Master. Seeing Page, Jun Changshao immediately remembered the intermediate earth technique that was rewarded for completing the mission. So he murmured, it should be able to learn it. Swish. He opened the spiritual beast pavilion and clicked on the intermediate earth technique that was automatically matched. Beast skill, intermediate earth technique. Effect. Allows contracted beasts to learn the elementary/intermediate earth skill. Requirements. Earth type vicious beast 1/1. 2010 Earth type 9th grade Earth cores Earth type. As expected, it's suitable for Peppa. However, he was still short of 10 high 9th grade spirit beast cores, so he couldn't forge one for it. There should be advanced spirit beast cores in the East Ocean Fishery Province, right? Jun Changshao murmured. The next day, Lu Wanshi and the others prepared a meal for the journey. After everyone had finished eating, they gathered at the training field of the main peak. Shua. Jun Changshao muttered with conviction. The ancient warship in his hand flew out rapidly, and then suspended in mid-air. It transformed into a several dozen Zhonglong ship. Wow! Lu Wanshi and Yao Minjing opened their small mouths. Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others had seen it on the battlefield before, so they were not too surprised. My babies! Jun Changshao snapped his fingers and said, get on the boat! Shua! Yi Xingchen flew up first, and then stood on the deck. He crossed his arms and leaned against the railing. At this time, if his hair was dyed green and equipped with 3 blades, he would be able to kill anyone. Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and he Woody flew up one after another. This time, only the 4 core disciples accompanied the departure to the East Ocean Fishery Province. The others stayed behind to guard the sect. As for the contracted beasts, Little Dragon and Xiao Maxian also chose to stay in the sect. Only Peppa went with them, which made it very excited because it rarely went out with its master. The Purple King originally planned to go and take a look, but going to the East Ocean Fishery Province was not going to the battlefield. He could come back anytime, so Jun Changshao asked him to stay behind to protect the sect. Girl, is the fried rice ready? It's ready. Lu Wanshi threw a spatial ring and said with a smile, there are thousands of fried rice inside, enough for Patriarch and Senior Brothers to eat for a long time. Okay. Jun Changshao jumped on the ancient warship, and then checked the water source. He waved to the disciples below and said, I may need some time to go to the East Ocean Fishery Province. You must cultivate hard. Yes, all the disciples shouted in unison. It's a bit fast. Sit tight. Jun Changshao instructed the 4 disciples, and then walked into the cockpit. He infused his spiritual sense into the driving array, and the ancient warship suddenly flashed. Junior Brother Yi, it's dangerous for you to lean against the railing like this, Li Qingyang shouted. Tisk. Yi Xingchen snorted and continued to lean against the railing. Although the warship could fly, how fast could it fly? Whoosh! At this moment, the driving array in the cockpit flashed, and the hexagram stones placed around suddenly erupted with energy, instantly driving the ancient warship toward the southeast. Heavens! So fast. The disciples on the training field all stared with their eyes wide open. The ancient battlefield that was originally floating in the air had disappeared at this moment, and appeared dozens of miles away from the Ironbone Mountain. Whoosh whoosh! Whoosh whoosh whoosh! The wind whistled, messing up the black hair. Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and he Woody who were on the deck had already stabilized themselves. But the warship was too fast, and they were now in a tilting position. Tragic Yi Xingchen. He had already disappeared from his original position, and his hands were tightly gripping the ropes at the stern of the ship, flying wildly like a kite. He transmitted his voice. Quickly stop the ship, quickly stop the ship. From the southwest Yangzhou to the southeast Shizhou, it would take about 4 hours for an emperor to fly at full speed. However, Jun Changshao, who was on the ancient warship, was already infinitely close to the coast in 10 minutes. Patriarch. Li Qingyang walked into the cockpit and said, "The sea to the Yuzhou is full of dangers. We are not familiar with the way, and I'm afraid it's easy to get lost." He had read a lot since he was young, so he had some understanding of the Eastern Sea. "That's true." Jun Changshao slowed down the ship and said while rubbing his chin, "We need to find an experienced navigator." Plop. On the deck outside, Night Emperor fell down in a sorry state. His black hair, which had been gently washed, was now standing on end. He roared in his mind. He must have done it on purpose. The city closest to the coast is called Bohai City. We can find an experienced boatman there and have them point the way to the Yuzhou, Li Qingyang said. "Okay, let's go to Bohai City." Jun Changshao adopted his second disciple's sword intent and drove the ancient warship toward Bohai City. Bohai City. It was a medium-sized city closest to the Eastern Sea in the southeast Shizhou. Because they lived on the sea, there were countless fishermen and boatmen. On this day, there were no clouds in the sky, and the weather was clear. Many ordinary people were busy with their own business when they suddenly felt the sky darken. They looked up and saw a ship emitting a desolate aura appear in their field of vision. A ship. A ship that can fly. Everyone's eyes widened. Many of the veteran boatmen were also dumbfounded. They had sailed ships their entire lives. But this was the first time they had seen one flying in the sky. "Everyone." Jun Changshao stood at the bow of the ship and said in a clear voice, "This seat is heading to the Yuzhou of the Eastern Sea today. I'm looking for experienced boatmen." Li Qingyang. He had wanted to enter in a low-key manner and ask around for seafaring talents, but the patriarch had directly driven the ancient warship over and suspended it in the air above the city to make a grand recruitment drive. Master Fan had emphasized that it was extremely urgent, so Jun Changshao had done it as simply as possible. "It's Jun Changshao, the patriarch of the sect of all times. My God, why did he come to Bohai City, and on a flying warship?" Jun Changshao's high-profile appearance above the city on the ancient warship immediately caused a huge commotion. "Jun Patriarch." At this moment, a lame old man walked out with a cane. His eyes were shining with an unusual light as he said, "This old man has been to the Yuzhou of the Eastern Sea before. I'm willing to show you the way." Jun Changshao looked down and confirmed with his eyes. Then, he released a vast amount of spiritual energy and pulled the old man onto the warship. "You're the one." Li Qingyang's eyelids immediately rolled up. The Yuzhou of the Eastern Sea was far away and dangerous. The patriarch was too hasty in choosing experienced boatmen. "Thank you, Jun Patriarch." The lame old man clasped his hands, and a trace of undetectable pain flashed through his eyes. Seeing this, Jun Changshao thought to himself, "This old man has a story." The system complained, "I can see that the host will meet anyone with a story in the world. Let's go." On the bow of the ship, Jun Changshao pointed at the boundless sea and said loudly, "The Yuzhou of the Eastern Sea." Hearing this, Yi Xingchen hurriedly came to the mast. "Anyo, you're scared." Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the other two also took protective measures. Whoosh, the engine was fully activated, and the ancient warship disappeared from the eyes of the martial artists in the city. Then it appeared above the boundless sea. "This speed." The lame old man in the control room widened his eyes and said in shock, "It's too terrifying." Author's note: Update 5, Update 2, Update 11. Chapter 1039. The sea area between the Southeast Shire State and the East Sea Fishery State was known as the East Sea and the Hell on Earth. There were all kinds of natural disasters deep in the East Sea, as well as countless sea beasts. Fishermen with decades of experience only dared to move in the sea near the mainland. Unless they didn't want to live, they wouldn't sail to the deepest part of the sea to look for excitement. Of course, the more dangerous the area, the more opportunities and treasures there would be. Because no one had set foot in it for many years, it had never been discovered. Although the martial artists on the mainland knew that the East Sea was a big unexploited treasure, they didn't dare to search for it easily. After all, as land animals, once they came to the sea, they would panic even if they were powerful. For thousands of years, countless human beings had died in the depths of the East Sea, Even strong masters like Wu Huang and half-saints were not spared. It was said that Wu Sheng had also died thousands of years ago, so he put on an even more terrifying appearance. Swish! In the blue sky, an ancient sailing ship emitting a desolate aura was moving at a high speed, leaving a faint light behind. It was mainly taken from a distance, so it didn't look special. But once it was taken up close, the warship traveled dozens of miles in the blink of an eye. What just flew past? Many fishing boats were fishing in the sea near the mainland. There were also many merchant ships and passenger ships. When they saw the light flash across the sky, they all widened their eyes. They only saw the light in the air, but couldn't see what it was at all. It's too fast. Sitting in front of the mast, Yi Xingchen pressed his hands to his hair and was greatly shocked. At first, he didn't take the ancient warship seriously. It wasn't until he started it that he realized that even the high-level Wu Sheng might not be able to catch up with it. In the cockpit, the crippled old man was also in disbelief. When he gradually calmed down, he made a professional judgment. June Patriarch, at the current speed, we can reach the East Sea Fishery State in half a month at the earliest. Half a month? Jun Changshao shook his head and said, "It's a bit too slow." The crippled old man almost fell to the ground. Since ancient times, it had taken a year and a half to reach the East Sea Fishery State. But he said it was too slow. What was more, there was no danger on the way. Otherwise, they would get lost in the sea or die in the ship. "Senior, what's your surname?" "My surname is Luo." "Roger?" "Luo Zhilong." "Oh," June Patriarch said with a smile. "Senior Luo, I'm counting on you to command the expedition to the East Ocean Fishery Province." June Patriarch. Luo Zhilong hurriedly cupped his hands and said, "This Luo does not deserve the title of senior." Jun Changshao and the Sect of all times were the hottest topics on the falling star continent. Although his cultivation was not very high, he had naturally heard of them. If he were to be evaluated, he could be described as a ferocious person, or a ferocious sect. To be honest, it was exactly because of that Luo Zhilong volunteered to join Jun Changshao's recruitment, because his intuition told him that the guy could take him to the East Ocean fishery. Then let's call him Old Luo. Alright, Senior Luo, what happened to your right leg? The system. Luo Zhilong was not bothered by the fact that he had called him Senior Luo again. Instead, he said bitterly, "Decades ago, when I returned from the East Sea Fishery Province, I accidentally entered the territory of the sea beasts. Although I was lucky enough to survive, one of my legs was bitten off." That was right. His right leg was a prosthetic, so he was limping. Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others had already captured Luo Zhilong with their spiritual thoughts after he showed up. But they did not ask as directly as the Patriarch did. "It seems that," Jun Changshao said, "the route to the East Sea Fishery Province is very dangerous." "It's more than dangerous." Luo Zhilong recalled his experience, and deep fear appeared on his face. He said, "It's practically hell." Jun Changshao said with great interest, "If it's hell, why do you still want to go there, Senior Luo?" "Because." After a brief silence, Luo Zhilong clenched his fists and said, "To find my best friend." There was a story. There was definitely a story. It would take time to go to the East Sea Fishery Province, and there was nothing to do. So Jun Changshao sat down and asked, "Senior Luo, can you tell us your story?" Luo Zhilong's emotions were obviously out of control. His face turned from pain to ferocity. Then, he struggled to raise his head and said, "Jun Patriarch, if your friend was in danger, would you choose to run away?" "No, I wouldn't," Jun Changshao replied. With his character, if his friend was in danger, he would definitely not run away. Instead, he would directly grab his weapon and fight with the enemy until the end of the world. Even if he could not defeat the enemy, he would find a way to help his friend resolve the danger. "I ran away." Luo Zhilong lowered his head again. He clenched his fists so hard that his fingernails dug into his flesh. Going to the East Sea Fishery Province, and being trapped in the territory of the sea monsters, was like a nightmare that tormented him. Back then, he abandoned his best friend to run away, but it always haunted the deepest part of his heart, making him suffer and torment. "You couldn't defeat the enemy?" Jun Changshao asked. "The enemy was too strong, If I ran a little slower, I would have turned into bones by now, Luo Zhilong said. Jun Changshao said, if you couldn't turn the tide in adversity, the result of rushing forward was that both of you would die. It was better to run away. After all, where there is life there is hope. Alas! Luo Zhilong shook his head and said, I thought so at that time too. But after I came back, every time I thought that my best friend was in danger because of me, my conscience would ache. A heart-wrenching pain. Jun Changshao said, it seems that you and your best friend have become close friends. Luo Zhilong did not understand what his best friend meant. He said solemnly, we grew up together. We went to the sea together and fished together. We are closer than brothers. You volunteered this time to avenge your best friend? Yes. Can you defeat the enemy? No. You still want to go even if you can't defeat the enemy? Aren't you courting death? Back then, I abandoned my best friend and left, which made me suffer for decades. Now that I have a chance to go to the East Sea Fishery Province again, it doesn't matter even if I die. Jun Changshao was silent. The old man's eyes already revealed that he was going to die. If I hadn't come to Bohai City and recruited navigators, would you have gone to the East Sea Fishery Province? No. Why? Because with my current state and cultivation, I will be buried in the sea before I reach the East Sea Fishery Province. You are still scared of death. No. Luo Zhilong grew agitated and roared in a hoarse voice. I just don't want to die in the sea. If I have to die, I want to die in the East Sea Fishery Province, so that I can meet my best friend in the afterlife. Brother, even if this world has the function of reincarnation, your best friend would have already been reincarnated, married, and had children after decades. Got it. Jun Changshao stood up and said, Old Luo, as long as you take me to the East Sea Fishery Province, I will make you. Pausing for a moment he said solemnly, die a worthy death. Outside of the cockpit, Li Qingyang's lips were slightly twitching. The old man was obviously too sentimental, and had already made up his mind to die. Why was the patriarch adding fuel to the fire instead of actively persuading him to live on? Although he was gradually becoming an infrastructure maniac, his kindness had always persisted. In a world where martial arts were respected, how ridiculous it was to be kind. How many people would say that he was a moron? But this was Li Qingyang. No matter how Jun Changshao led him astray, he always adhered to his original heart and stuck to his beliefs. Please give your applause to the second disciple of the sect of all times. Chapter 1040. Old Luo's story was very simple. He encountered danger on the way to the Eastern Sea Fishery Province, abandoned his best friend, and survived until now. After decades of mental torture, he resolutely decided to set off to seek death. In fact, he had been waiting for the person who would take him to the Eastern Sea Fishery Province all these years. During this period, he had rejected many invitations. Not long ago, a beautiful young master and a black-robed old man came to visit. Their strength was not bad, but old Luo always felt a little unsafe, so he rejected them. Until Jun Changshao appeared on the ancient warship in a high-profile manner. The desire to die in his body suddenly beat wildly. Confirmation. He's the one I've been waiting for. Luo Zhilong said seriously. I remember the route to the Eastern Sea Fishery Province, but there will be many natural and man-made disasters along the way. Whether or not we can resolve them depends on Jun Patriarch. To be honest, there was no shortage of navigators to the Eastern Sea Fishery Province. Even those who had never been there before could find the place with decades of experience. The key was to have the ability to resolve all kinds of dangers along the route. Natural disasters are understandable, but what do you mean man-made disasters? Jun Changshao asked. Luo Zhilong said, the waters closest to the Eastern Sea Fishery Province have pirate activities all year round. Even if the people of the continent are lucky enough to avoid natural disasters, they may still die in their hands. I see. Jun Changshao was still quite wary of natural disasters. After all, the power of nature was very terrifying. As for man-made disasters, it did not matter. Raise a flag. Who dares to rob me? I'll rob them of their underwear as well. Old Luo, what kind of natural disasters are there? We haven't sailed into the depths of the Eastern Sea yet, so there's no danger for now. But once we enter, the first thing we have to experience is... Luo Zhilong paused and pointed outside, his face crumbling. Superstorm. Jun Changxiao hurriedly looked over. At the end of the horizon, dark clouds gathered, like the bottom of a big black pot hanging in the sky. Damn! It's super! This was just looking from the farthest distance. If they sailed the ship, it would definitely be like entering a dark hell. Whoosh! The speed of the ancient warship was extremely fast. Originally, it was still 1,000 li away from the storm zone, but now, it was infinitely closer. The cluster of black clouds was even more majestic and vast. Lightning could even be seen shooting out from the clouds. June Patriarch. Luo Zhilong said solemnly. The superstorm is the first disaster in the depths of the East Sea. Once any ship enters, not only will it be disturbed by the violent winds, it will also trigger lightning. For the past 10,000 years, the number of martial artists who died here has been reduced to the sands of the Ganges. Back then, when he first went to the Eastern Sea's fishery province, he had tried it before. Although he passed through it safely, he still felt his hair stand on end every time he thought about it. It's not a big problem. Jun Gosheng smiled. The problem isn't too big? That's because you haven't seen it. Dozens of large sailboats were traveling together, but they were instantly sunk by the torrential waves and lightning strikes. Luo Zhilong had seen this scene before. At that time, he was so scared that he almost wet his pants. Swish! The ancient warship maintained the same speed as before. Soon, they were nearing the area of the superstorm. Hoo-hoo! Hoo-hoo-hoo! Before the boat even entered, a gust of wind swept over like a knife. Yanyo has just combed his hair. Because he didn't form an air wall in advance to protect his hair, his black hair is blown up again. The magic of love is circling. Thinking of you makes me burst with joy night and day. Although Li Qingyang and Xiao Ziji had formed an air wall in front of them, when they felt the gust of wind sweeping over, they instantly realized that if it were an ordinary person without cultivation, they would probably be torn apart by the wind. On Earth, natural disasters were already extremely terrifying. As a high-level falling star continent, it would definitely be stronger, not weaker. Therefore, although the lifespans of the living beings here were generally longer, they would still die easily. Hoo-hoo! The wind was still howling, and the intensity was still increasing. Swish! The ancient warship's speed wasn't affected at all. In the end, like a small sesame seed, it blended into the superstorm that covered thousands of li. Although Luo Zhilong wasn't affected by the wind, when he entered and saw the darkness around him, his breathing quickened. It was as though a huge rock was pressing down on his chest. Only those who had experienced it would understand how terrifying the first natural disaster was. Wait a minute. Where's Jun Patriarch? Jun Changxiao, who was originally standing beside him, disappeared into thin air when the warship entered the storm. Luo Zhilong hurriedly searched for him, and found that fellow at the bow of the warship. It can't be. He actually took the initiative to walk out, and even stood at the front. The power of lightning madly converged in the sky, and the originally dark and hellish environment welcomed a brief moment of light. The light poured down on Jun Changxiao's body, and a trace of pride appeared on his handsome face that made people want to vomit. It was undeniable that the superstorm was much stronger than normal natural disasters. However, as a man who had used his face and his body to resist the upper realm's palm print, how could he be afraid? At that moment, under the light of the thunder and lightning, Jun Changxiao, who was standing at the bow of the warship, seemed to be blessed by the light of Buddha, giving off an extremely sacred feeling. How could the sword and martial saints not be sacred? Boom! Suddenly, an earth-shattering sound came from the sky. The power of thunder and lightning, which had been brewing for a long time, came crashing down on the ancient warship's path. Zooming out, the flashing thunder and lightning were like a huge sword descending from the sky, violently tearing apart everything around it. Luo Zhilong's eyes almost popped out. They had just entered the area of the superstorm, so the thunder and lightning should not be so strong. That guy must have been too arrogant and angered the water god. So he sent down even more terrifying thunder and lightning. Most people who lived by the sea worshipped the water god. And every year when they went out to sea to fish, they would offer all kinds of offerings, praying for a smooth journey and a safe return. Whoosh whoosh. Beezity beezity beezity, the wind howled, and the thunder and lightning came crashing down. Jun Changshao stood proudly at the bow of the warship, not even looking at the thunder and lightning. It was as if he was admiring the scenery below. Jun Patriarch, be careful! Luo Zhilong cried out in alarm. Creak! Suddenly, the ancient warship came to a stop. Why did it stop? Why did it stop now? Luo Zhilong's eyes were filled with despair. Based on the speed of the ancient warship just now, it might have been able to fly over and avoid being hit by the thunder and lightning. Now that it suddenly stopped in the sky, it could only wait to be hit. Swoosh! Suddenly, Li Qingyang rushed forward and stopped in the area of the thunder and lightning. His black hair fluttered in the wind, and a smile appeared on his face. Wang Wang! The space trembled slightly, and the heavenly slaughter lightning rune stood in front of him. Pa! Li Qingyang's right hand flicked lightly, and it landed on the scabbard. Clang! Xiao, the heavenly slaughter lightning rune was unsheathed, and it shone with a dazzling light, welcoming the power of the thunder and lightning that was about to fall. Boom! The powerful thunder and lightning collided, and as if it was injected with high pressure, it caused the sword to hang in the air, emitting a dazzling light. In an instant, this area that was shrouded in darkness seemed to have turned into day. The camera shifted to a lower altitude, and many broken planks could be seen floating on the sea. Swoosh! With a thought, Li Qingyang recalled the heavenly slaughter lightning rune and held it in his hand. Feeling the restless thunder and lightning inside, he said happily, Patriarch, you can really use thunder and lightning to recharge weapons. Jun Gosheng smiled. I'll leave this to you. Yes. Li Qingyang held the heavenly slaughter lightning rune tightly and looked up at the thunder and lightning that was still brewing in the rolling black clouds. His eyes were burning. Come. Chapter 1041. Boom! Boom! In the area of the superstorm, thunder and lightning were erupting crazily, each time stronger than the last. The sky was also flickering. In the control room, Luo Zhilong's hands were trembling violently, and his eyes were filled with shock and horror. Outside, Li Qingyang stood with his sword facing the sky. Thunder and lightning struck down crazily and made contact with the tip of the sword, causing the heavenly slaughter thunder pattern to shine brightly, attracting thunder with the sword safe and sound. Oh my god! This is too terrifying. Xiao Ziji, who was standing on the deck, was also stunned. Obviously, he didn't expect Li Qingyang to be able to use the force of nature to charge thunder and lightning for his weapon. This was Jun Changxiao's idea. When he saw the thunder and lightning gathering in the sky, he guessed that he could use it to charge the heavenly slaughter thunder pattern. Sure enough, it would work. Boom! Boom! The power of thunder and lightning in the sky was still attacking recklessly. After coming into contact with the weapon, it was instantly absorbed and transformed into pure thunder energy. Li Qingyang said with a burning gaze, If I use my ultimate skill together with my thunder punishment body, the power will only be stronger. Perhaps realizing that the human they locked onto was a little unusual, the dark clouds gathered in the sky gradually dispersed helplessly, and the sky was clear again. It's over. Luo Zhilong was pleasantly surprised. Jun Changxiao said speechlessly, It's over so soon? He was still thinking that after his disciple's divine weapon condensed thunder and lightning, he would use his body to withstand it and improve his thunder punishment body. Swoosh! Li Qingyang waved one hand, and the heavenly slaughter thunder pattern, which had been nurtured for many times, tilted. From the tip of the sword to the blade, it was surrounded by a thunder luster, looking even more powerful than before. Patriarch, he said with a burning gaze, I have a feeling that if I use my ultimate skill, I might be able to kill Wu Huang at the peak or even a half-sage. Not bad, Jun Changxiao said. Luo Zhilong was a little dizzy. Wu Huang at the peak and half-sage were existences that everyone looked up to. A disciple of the sect of all times, actually had a feeling that he could kill them. This was simply too crazy. One is marked by the company one keeps. Although Li Qingyang could still scrupulously abide by the rare and precious kindness, he still could not avoid being led astray a little by Go Sheng. For example, just now, if it were in the past, he would have strode over and raised his sword to attract the lightning. However, he just had to summon the heavenly slaughter lightning mark from his spatial ring and pull the sword out of its sheath with a light flick of his finger. Although his movements did not have a strong aura of acting tough, because it was so smooth and unrestrained, it was the perfect example of acting tough. It could have been simple and unadorned, but it had to be so gaudy. Without a doubt, she had been infected by Jun Changshao. As for the fact that he dared to boast about killing Wu Huang, and a half-saint not long after he entered Wu Huang's peak stage, he also had Go Sheng's style. After the superstorm ended, the ancient warship once again flew towards the east. Because the ship was moving so quickly, the black clouds that covered thousands of kilometers had already emerged from the ship before they had even completely dissipated. Luo Zhilong turned back to look at the gradually dissipating clouds, his heart unable to calm down. He said in shock, "We passed through the first calamity so easily." When he first encountered such terrible weather, he had narrowly escaped death and almost lost his life here. One was hell, the other was simple. These were definitely two very distinct extremes. "Old Luo." Jun Changshao walked in and said, "What calamities are there after this?" Luo Zhilong said, "The second calamity is called Rolling Rock. It's similar to the superstorm, but it's not lightning. Instead, huge rocks fall from the sky. As long as they touch the ship, they will shatter into pieces." "Rain, snow, hail, and even stones?" Jun Changshao blurted out. "There won't be a mountain of blades or a sea of fire after this, right?" "There will be. There's really going to be," the system said. "Are you surprised? Are you surprised?" Whoosh, the ancient warship continued to move forward in the sky. However, because they had entered the deep sea, there were many dangers, so Jun Changshao slowed down a lot. On the sea, sailboats could be seen one after another. Some were safe and sound, while others had cracked and charred decks. It seemed that they had been through the superstorm and were attacked by lightning. "Patriarch." Li Qingyang pointed at a tattered sailboat below and said solemnly, "The martial artists on it are all dead." Jun Changshao was puzzled. These ships should be heading to the East Sea Fishery Province. The journey is obviously very dangerous. Why would they go to their deaths? "Because," Luo Zhilong said seriously, "wealth, fame, and power." Jun Changshao's mouth twitched. He said, "Is there a great secret treasure left by someone in the East Sea Fishery Province? Why would so many martial artists rush to it?" Luo Zhilong said, "There are many natural mineral veins in the East Sea Fishery Province. This is a huge wealth. Thousands of years ago, there was a mining boom. Even now, countless people are still attracted to it." "Natural mineral veins?" Jun Changshao's eyes lit up. "It's over," the system said to itself. "This guy's purpose of going to the East Sea Fishery Province is no longer to save Master Fan, but to focus on mining. What about fame and power?" Jun Changshao asked. Luo Zhilong was silent for a moment and said, "A few decades ago, I lived in the East Sea Fishery Province for a while and learned that there are 10 powerful empires here. They have been at war with each other for years. If martial artists with good strength join the empires and make great contributions, they can be promoted and enjoy fame and power." "I see. Wealth, fame, and power." Of these three, Jun Changshao preferred the former the most. He had absolutely no interest in the latter two. The system added, "The host is not interested in beauty either." Luo Zhilong said, "A few decades ago, the Zhenwei Empire in the East Sea Fishery Province had a new emperor. He made bold reforms and declared war on other empires. It seemed that he was going to unify the fishery province. There is no shortage of ambitious people anywhere." Jun Changshao changed the topic and said, "Old Luo, have you heard of Master Fan?" "I've heard of Fan Yezi, the famous forging master in the 9 provinces," Luo Zhilong said. Fan Yezi. Jun Changshao remembered the forging masters from the late spring and autumn period to the early warring states period in his world. He couldn't help but sigh. Do all the masters of forging like to call themselves Yezi? Alas! Luo Zhilong shook his head and said, Master Fan followed me to the East Sea Fishery Province years ago, but I don't know if he's still alive. He went with you? Jun Changxiao was surprised. Luo Zhilong said, there were many famous forging masters with him. I learned from the conversation that they were invited by Emperor Jinwei to taste a magical ore in the Jinwei Empire. Emperor Jinwei? Xiao Ziji, who was standing outside, put on a disdainful smile after hearing that. As one of the 10 great martial emperors of the Falling Star continent, he was known as the Night Emperor. Someone in the remote East Sea Fishery Province actually dared to name himself emperor. He was so arrogant that he wanted Li Tianshang to stand shoulder to shoulder with the sun. Master Fan always sent a message in a bottle to the coast of the Southeast Shi Province. How can we not know if he's still alive? Jun Changxiao was puzzled. Luo Zhilong shook his head and said, the Southeast Shi Province and the East Sea Fishery Province are very far apart. It would take at least a few decades for the message in a bottle to reach here. Jun Changxiao said to himself, I almost forgot about that. If the system had a physical body, it would jump out immediately, spread its legs and pointed at him, roaring. What do you mean almost forgot? You only remembered it because he reminded you. It would take a long time for the message in a bottle to reach here. In other words, Master Fan's request for help had to be pushed back a few decades. Now whether he was still alive or not could only be put with a question mark. Chapter 1042. Jun Changxiao steered the ancient warship toward the East Sea Fishery Province. There were many disasters waiting for him along the way. The camera turned to a small isolated island. Hua hua. The waves hit the giant rock. An old man with disheveled hair sat on the rock. His clothes were tattered, and it was hard to see his face. His hands and feet were bound by iron chains, as if he had been imprisoned on the island for decades. When the message in bottles reaches the mainland, someone will come to save me. That's right. This was Master Blacksmith Fan Yezi, who only asked about his name, but did not see him. Occasionally, he would use weapons to set off Jun Changxiao's pretentious atmosphere. It was a pity that there was no chapter to talk about at the moment. Otherwise, there would definitely be many readers who would leave their names behind. After all, the man who appeared before Su Xiaomo, Xiao Zueji, and Yi Xingchen finally appeared on screen after 1,000 chapters. It was really too memorable. Old man. One of the armored soldiers behind him said coldly, let's not talk about how far this place is from the mainland. There are countless sea beasts in the sea alone. I'm afraid your message bottles will be swallowed by them before they reach the shore. Master Fan said, the message in bottles that I made have hidden traps. How could they be eaten by sea monsters so easily? Oh, he said what he was thinking again. Tisk, the soldier said disapprovingly. Even if the mainland forces know about it, do you really think that someone will come to save you from thousands of miles away? You should know that in this world, it's every man for himself. Who would risk coming to the East Sea Fishery Province to save an old man who only knows how to forge? Master Fan's old eyes shone. According to my estimation, the message in bottles should have reached the mainland coast. I believe that it won't be long before a large number of experts come to rescue me, because I Fan Yezi have a lot of friends. The soldier said indifferently, it seems that we have to be prepared in case someone really comes to save you. If he was not bound by the chains, Master Fan really wanted to slap himself in the face. Because he accidentally said what he was thinking. Forget it. Too much talk is bound to slip up. I'd better continue watching the sea. Fan Yezi continued to sit on the rock, motionless like a statue. If the soldiers behind him were a little stronger, they would have noticed that the scattered pebbles were trembling slightly, as if they were very excited. This was momentum. It was an aura that did not belong to martial arts. There was such a legend in the Starfall continent. If someone comprehended the art of forging to the peak of perfection, anything related to ores would be drawn to them, and they would even desire to be refined by them. Fan Yezi didn't deliberately release it, but he was still able to excite the stone. From this, it could be seen that his forging technique had already reached the peak of perfection. It was a pity. He had been stranded on an isolated island for decades. He no longer forged any equipment, and at this moment, he had become a dispirited old man. The sun was setting. Fan Yezi's shadow was elongated. It could be said that the master was past his prime. Boom! Above the East Sea, the ancient warship that was speeding through the air suddenly exploded. Li Qingyang and the others, who were resting with their eyes closed, opened their eyes one after another. They saw the patriarch walking out with a charred face. He roared angrily, "Fan Yezi, you set a trap for a message in a bottle? Do you still want to be a saint?" When he had nothing to do, he took out the message in a bottle handed over by the Drizzle Hall, and inserted his spiritual thoughts into it. As soon as he touched it, it exploded with a bang. "Patriarch?" Li Qingyang asked. "Are you okay?" Jun Changshao circulated his spiritual energy and removed the charred skin on his face. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly saw many floating mountains in the sky in front of him. He exclaimed, "There are floating mountains in the Starfall continent too?" Luo Zhilong said solemnly, "This is the rolling rock disaster. As long as a ship enters, huge rocks will fall from the floating mountains. Not only will they cause damage, but they will also set off huge waves." Jun Changshao touched his chin and said, "These things are a bit of a hindrance. Send self, when we get close, move them all away." "Yes," Xiao Ziji replied. Move them away." Luo Zhilong's eyes widened. Whoosh! A moment later, the ancient warship arrived at the periphery of the rolling rock disaster and stopped in front of a floating mountain. Xiao Ziji flew over. In comparison, it was like an ant facing a giant. "The weight of this mountain is immeasurable," Luo Zhilong said in disbelief. "Can the disciples of the sect of all times really move it away?" Whoosh whoosh. At this moment, a heavy aura appeared around Xiao Ziji. He spread his arms and pressed them against the mountain. His exposed skin immediately revealed firm muscles. "Rise!" he shouted angrily. Rumble! The heavy floating mountain was directly lifted up. Seeing this, Luo Zhilong's mouth opened. It would not be a problem to stuff 2 eggs into it. What made him even more shocked and incredulous was that Xiao Ziji, who had lifted up the floating mountain, suddenly threw it out with an even heavier strength and said, "Go!" Whoosh! A huge mountain was thrown out in his field of vision. Finally, it crashed into another mountain with a boom, and the two instantly split apart. Luo Zhilong's expression was blank. Ever since he had boarded the warship, his identity was not just a temporary navigator. He also had another identity. That was a passerby used by the sect of all times to show off when they were acting cool. Based on his current facial expression, he was undoubtedly very outstanding. Whoosh! The ancient warship continued to move forward. However, it kept stopping because there were still many mountains blocking the way. In the end, they were all easily flung away by Xiao Ziji's obstacles. Boom! Boom! Whoosh whoosh whoosh! In the depths of the rolling rock disaster, huge rocks fell from the floating mountains. Although the dozens of ships could barely avoid them, they could not avoid the huge waves. Ah! Whoosh whoosh whoosh! The huge waves swept over and directly overturned a ship. The martial artists on board fell into the sea and startled a large number of sea beasts at the bottom of the sea. They were instantly swallowed one by one. Big brother! On a ship drifting in the waves like a lonely leaf, a middle-aged man said in despair, "The second disaster. We can't pass it." Sigh. The man called Big Brother tried to stabilize himself and said in grief, "If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have taken the risk to go to the Eastern Seas Fishery Province." The ships that were stuck in the rolling rock disaster were in imminent danger. As long as the next wave of rocks fell, more martial artists would definitely die. However, just as they were in despair, they suddenly realized that there was no more movement after the previous wave of rocks. When the waves receded and the ships stabilized, they all looked up and were dumbfounded. High up in the sky, the huge mountains that originally existed were nowhere to be seen. Where were the mountains? Where were the mountains? Big brother! The martial artist who spoke earlier exclaimed, "Look, what's that?" Big Brother and the other members of the ship looked over and saw a warship floating in the sky. It was shocking enough that a mountain could float. A ship could also float. That was really strange. Wait a minute. Why was there a person standing near the floating mountain? Why was he pressing his hands against the stone wall? Why did he throw it out? Fuck. Seeing Xiao Ziji throw away the floating mountain from afar, the shock was so great that even after the ancient warship had flown away for a while, everyone was still in a daze. Big brother, that martial artist said with difficulty. Is this a dream? Ah! Suddenly he screamed. The martial artist called Big Brother let go of his face and said with certainty, if I feel pain, then it's not a dream. Chapter 1043. June Patriarch. If we follow this direction for 1,000 li, we will enter the third Calamity Blade Mountain, Luo Zhilong said. After entering the depths of the East Sea, he had been very worried. Only after passing 2 calamities did he finally relax. Jun Changshao and his disciple had easily passed through a place as terrifying as hell in the eyes of the world. As expected, he had not misjudged. He could bring him to the East Sea's fishery province. Blade Mountain, Jun Changshao said expectantly. What will it be like? Whoosh, the ancient warship continued to speed forward. Along the way, it had also installed the hexagram drive. It was fast, but it consumed too much energy. If it wasn't for the fact that Master Fan had written that it was extremely urgent, Jun Changshao might have used ordinary spirit stones as a source of energy and leisurely rushed over, treating it like a vacation. Whoosh whoosh. After traveling for 1,000 li, thick dark clouds gathered in the distance, emitting a sharp aura. Jun Patriarch, Luo Zhilong said seriously, that is the Blade Mountain region. Once the warship enters, it will be attacked by blades like rain. Anyo, Jun Changshao said. I'll leave this to you. Yi Xingchen remained silent. He looked at the dark clouds in the distance, his eyes filled with disdain. He had wanted to attack the first 2 calamities. However, Li Qingyang and Xiao Ziji had stolen the limelight. It was finally his turn. Vulgar mortal. Just wait to be shocked by this emperor's strength. Whoosh, the ancient warship instantly merged into the Blade Mountain region. Blade light fell from the sky, carrying with it the power to tear apart space. Clang! The true Yang sword was unsheathed, and the sword light illuminated the world. Whoosh, after a while, the ancient warship flew out of the Blade Mountain region. Yi Xingchen stood on the deck, holding his sword, his mouth twitching. Why did those 2 each use a chapter to pass the Calamity Blade? But when it was his turn to act cool, it was over with just a few words. It was not difficult at all. Jun Changshao shook his head. He had thought that the trip to the East Sea would be exciting. In the end, he did not even need to do anything. He could just leave it to his disciple. Swish! Swish! The ancient warship soared through the skies. A few days later, a few more natural disasters came one after another. Although they were full of tricks, they were not challenging at all. Li Qingyang and the other 3 were able to resolve them easily. Luo Zhilong was shocked as he watched the originally scorching sea of fire behind him gradually dissipate. This journey was simply too easy. Old Luo, Jun Changshao asked, how many more natural disasters are there? Luo Zhilong shook his head and said, we've already passed all the obvious natural disasters. I'm just afraid of encountering a hidden natural disaster. A hidden catastrophe. There are many strange phenomena in the depths of the East Sea. For example, if you're heading east, you'll enter a foggy area and drive in the opposite direction. This is called a hidden natural disaster. However, it depends on the weather and time, so we may not encounter it. Fog zone. Jun Changshao pointed into the distance and asked, are you referring to this? Luo Zhilong hurriedly looked out of the cockpit. In the distance, there was rolling white fog. Because it was floating on the sea, it looked like a super large ghost. No way. He hugged his head and broke down. I just said it and it appeared. Your mouth is blessed. Whoosh, the ancient warship crashed headfirst into the fog that covered an extremely wide area. The moment they entered, Jun Changshao discovered that his spiritual senses were restricted. Not only was it difficult to explore, even his sense of direction was lost. Patriarch, Li Qingyang exclaimed, this disciple can't tell north from south. He woody frowned and said, the fog is similar to a seal. It suppresses spiritual senses and sense of direction. There's no aura of a formation. The power of nature is truly mysterious. Jun Changshao sighed. Jun Patriarch. Luo Zhilong pointed to the left and said, "Turn around and go this way." Although they had lost their sense of direction, as a professional navigator, they were able to maintain their clarity of mind at all times. Through their many years of experience, they managed to find the direction to head east. Jun Changshao hurriedly steered the ancient warship in the direction he pointed. After a full day and countless changes in direction, they finally flew out of the foggy area. Phew! Luo Zhilong completely relaxed. It was too tiring to maintain a high level of concentration for an entire day. Jun Patriarch. Luo Zhilong said, "We're now in the waters of the East Sea Fishery State. If we don't encounter any hidden natural disasters, we should be able to reach our destination in 7 days." This time his mouth was not blessed, because they had sailed for 4 days without encountering any natural disasters. Of course, they would occasionally encounter mirages, storms, and even attacks from sea beasts. But because they were too low level, they could not be called natural disasters. After entering the waters of the East Sea Fishery State, there were very few ships passing by. To be exact, there was not a single one. This was very different from the depths of the East Sea. Jun Changshao and the others knew that it was not that there were no ships passing by, but that they had either died or been lost in the endless sea due to various natural disasters. Gulp. Luo Zhilong took a sip of liquor and exclaimed, "Jun Patriarch, I never thought that it would be so easy to travel from the southeast to the East Sea Fishery State." "I didn't expect it either," Lord Changshao said. Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and He Wudi were sitting next to him, drinking and eating all kinds of seafood. Luo Zhilong looked at Yi Xingchen, who was standing in front of the mast with his hands crossed, and asked in confusion, "Is your disciple not good at drinking? He likes to sleep when he drinks too much, so he doesn't touch any alcohol now," Jun Changshao explained. Hearing that, Yi Xingchen's expression became interesting. As a reincarnated martial emperor, the biggest stain in his life was that he would drink too much and break off his relationship with his lover. The seafood in the waters of the East Sea Fishery State was very delicious. After eating and drinking to their heart's content, they lay leisurely on the bow of the ship to bask in the sun. Occasionally, the sea breeze with a fishy smell would blow over, making them feel refreshed. Jun Changshao leaned against the reclining chair and said to himself, "This is the life I want." If there were no restrictions of the main task, he would definitely prefer to travel the world freely. "Patriarch," Li Qingyang said, "there's a ship in the distance." Jun Changshao released his spiritual senses and found that there were more than a dozen large warships hundreds of miles away in the sea, surrounding a small ship. Energy flashed in the sky, and it was obvious that there was a fierce battle going on. "It's pirates." After getting closer, Luo Zhilong said with a serious expression. Jun Changshao had been looking at the small ship all the time. Judging from its shape, it should be from the southeast. It was not easy to survive so many natural disasters, but in the end, it encountered a man-made disaster. It was really a bit unlucky. Wait, the person in the ship was a bit familiar. Boom! Boom! Dozens of warships stopped in the sky, and powerful spiritual energy burst out. A black-robed old man was fighting with 5 powerful experts, and he was gradually at a disadvantage. "Young master," he roared loudly, "hurry up and leave! Leave! Kakik!" On the warship in the distance, a one-eyed middle-aged man laughed strangely and said, "You dare to kill the subordinates of the lone dragon pirate group. You will all die today." "Damn it!" The young man in brocade on the small ship clenched his fists and said unwillingly, "It's just a group of pirates. Why are there so many half-saint experts?" Boom! At this moment, there was another explosion in the sky. The black-robed old man could not resist and was directly blasted away. In the end, he staggered and hung on the sea, spitting out a mouthful of blood. "Elder Lin!" The young man in brocade was shocked. Whoosh! A half-saint from the pirate side flew down from the sky and gathered violent energy in his palm. However, just as he was about to attack, the sky suddenly darkened. Everyone looked up and saw a huge warship appear out of nowhere in the sky. Yuan Gongzi. Jun Changshao sat on the bow and said with a grin, I didn't expect that we would meet in the Sea of Yuzhou. Suddenly hearing that familiar voice, Yuan Gongzi stood on the deck, as if he was struck by lightning. After a while he roared in despair. Why is he here? Chapter 1044. Yuan Gongzi swore that he would never see Jun Changshao again. For that reason, a few months ago, he spent a lot of money to hire a sailor to go to the East Ocean Fishery Province. After a narrow escape, he finally got close to the land that was separated from the continent. An unknown place, an unknown custom. I Yuan Feng. I will start anew here and be reborn here. However, when he was besieged by a group of pirates, the guy who made him restless and scared showed up again. Good heavens and earth. What sins did I, Yuan Feng, commit in my previous life? Why are you punishing me like this? Yuan Gongzi, standing on the bow of the ship, Jun Changshao said with a smile. I should be the one asking you that, shouldn't I? He detected Yuan Gongzi on the ship with his spiritual thoughts. He was quite surprised that Yuan Gongzi was in the waters of the East Ocean Fishery Province. Or was it because he knew that he couldn't survive in the Demon Emperor's Gate after his previous provocation, and decided to cross the East Ocean to save his life? Alas! What a sin! What a sin! Yuan Feng clenched his fists and almost couldn't help but roar. Why am I here? Don't you have any idea? Yuan Gongzi, Jun Changshao glanced at the pirates around, and said with a smile. You seem to be in danger. Do you need Jun's help? Yuan Gongzi fell silent. Everyone. Jun Changshao clasped his hands and said, This is Yuan Gongzi, Jun's old friend. Please don't make things difficult for Jun's sake. He acted like a big shot in the martial arts world. Yuan Gongzi. On the continent, Jun Changshao might have a lot of influence, but in the East Ocean Fishery Province, which was a paradise, no one knew him. As expected, the one-eyed man, the leader of the pirates, sneered and said, Boy, your flying ship must be an ultimate treasure, right? Jun Changshao said, Yes. The eyes of the one-eyed man and his subordinates immediately lit up. After roaming the sea for so long, this was the first time he had seen a warship that could fly. If he could seize it, wouldn't it be easier to rob people in the future? Brat. The one-eyed man laughed strangely. I've given you face, but if you want me to let this so-called Yuan Gongzi go, you'll have to hand over the warship. One item for one life. Your Excellency is very particular about this, Jun Changshao said. Yuan Gongzi's expression changed slightly. Could it be that this guy really intended to use the warship in exchange for his own safety? Impossible. His head must not have been kicked by a donkey. As someone who had been blackmailed many times, Yuan Gongzi firmly believed that Jun Changshao was someone who would do anything for money. It was absolutely wishful thinking to blackmail him. Swish! Swish! At this moment, the few half-saints who were besieging Elder Jin flew up and hovered near the ancient warship. Obviously, they had received orders to seize it regardless of whether the other party handed it over or not. Jun Changshao stood at the bow of the warship and smiled. However, the value of my warship is a little high. It's a bit of a loss to just exchange it for one life. What else do you want in exchange? The one-eyed man said with a smile. He secretly sent a message to the other half-saints to find an opportunity to seize the warship. Jun Changshao said, I also want to. His eyes suddenly turned cold. Exchange it for your lives. Whoosh whoosh. As soon as he finished speaking, a powerful sword aura burst out from his body and crashed over like a monstrous wave. Not good. The half-saints around him were shocked when they saw the powerful aura spreading out. They wanted to escape in the next second, but they were completely frozen in place. Under the pressure of the domineering aura, the five of them felt as if they were in hell. The shock in their eyes became more and more intense. The aura of a martial saint. The aura of a sword saint. This young man, who seemed to be in his 20s, was actually a sword and martial saint. Whoosh whoosh. The sword and martial saint's aura was still spreading crazily. In an instant, it covered thousands of feet of the sea. Whether it was the waves, the warship, or the pirates standing on the deck, they were all bound by an invisible force. Jun Changshao rarely used this kind of aura that he had when he entered Wu Huang. Because when he used it, most of the time, it was a battle of a higher level, so the effect was minimal. Now, facing a group of experts who were weaker than him, he directly opened 2 auras and suppressed them to the point that they couldn't move. It was simple and domineering. The injured Elder Lin felt the powerful aura and said in shock, "The strength of this aura might not be inferior to the sect leaders." Yuan Gongzi didn't judge the strength of the aura and said in disbelief, When did he break through to the saint level? And he's a sword and martial saint." Whoosh! At this moment the one-eyed man, who was suppressed by the aura and couldn't move, flew up and then hung in front of the warship. "This warship?" Jun Changshao tilted his head and said, "Do you still want it?" The one-eyed man was not a fool. At this moment, he already knew that the opponent was very strong, so he hurriedly said in his heart, "No, I don't want it." "A man must keep his word," Jun Changshao said with a cold look. "I'll give you the warship, but you and your men's lives must be handed over." "No." Boom! The one-eyed man only said one word, and his body suddenly exploded. Bang! 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 At the same time, several half-saints who were bound in midair also exploded with despair in their eyes. Blood and mincemeat poured down like rain. Swish! Li Qingyang and Xiao Ziji waved their hands, and soft spiritual energy flew out and collected all the space rings that were mixed in. When the patriarch was showing off, they were responsible for looting. Bang! 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 The explosion was still ongoing. After a while, hundreds of pirates on the warship on the sea were all dead. Jun Changshao would not have any mercy for these bandits and robbers. If he could kill them all, he would kill them all. "Yuan Gongzi." Jun Changshao withdrew his domineering aura and said, "A talent like you, as long as you follow a wise leader, you will definitely achieve immortal merits. Why do you stay in the Far East Sea?" Yuan Gongzi was silent. He used to think that he was talented enough to help the Demon Emperor's Gate restore the former glory of the Demon Emperor's Gate. It was not until he met Jun Changshao that he began to doubt whether he was a king or a bronze. Whether Yuan Gongzi was a king or not, it was still impossible to define. But it was undeniable that the companions and helpers he found were all bronze. Facing a group of godly opponents with cheats was already very difficult. But there was also a group of pig teammates dragging the rhythm and brainlessly sending him. No one could withstand it. "Yuan Gongzi," Jun Changshao said seriously. "Jun invites you again to join the sect of all times and create a better tomorrow hand in hand." Since they met in the distant East Sea, it was fate. Therefore, he had the intention to recruit Yuan Feng. After all, it was not easy to find someone who could lead, endure hardships, and be a scapegoat. "Sorry," Yuan Gongzi said with a firm gaze. "We walk different paths." Jun Changshao raised his hand and gave him a thumbs up. "You are the second person who rejected my recruitment multiple times. The first one was Dai Lu. He was still locked in a cell and receiving Zhao Daoda's chicken soup for the soul. Yuan Gongzi was luckier than him. At least he was captured once and released. He could even cross the sea." Jun Changshao said, "Once, twice, but not thrice. I hope that the next time we meet, you won't reject my kind recruitment." Whoosh! The ancient warship flew away, disappearing without a trace. He left. Young Master Yuan's eyes were filled with astonishment. When he rejected Jun Changshao's recruitment, he was already prepared to die, but the other party let him go again. Dai Lu cried until he fainted in the toilet. "Young Master." Elder Lin clutched his chest, his face pale, and said, "Jun Changshao seems to be going to the East Sea Fishery State. Well, what should we do?" Yuan Gongzi shook his head bitterly. "I can't believe we met him here. Since we can't hide, we can only face him. Let's go to the East Sea Fishery State." Chapter 1045. Seeing that they were about to reach Fishery Province of the East Sea, Yuan Gongzi would definitely not return, so he could only brace himself and move forward. Even if he met Jun Changshao again, he could only blame his bad luck. "Young Master," Elder Lin said, "he saved us." Yuan Gongzi's face suddenly turned ugly. The first time he was released by Jun Changshao, he was still angry and resentful after escaping, because he was captured first. But this time, didn't killing the pirates save him? Although Yuan Gongzi didn't want to admit it, he couldn't change the fact that he owed Jun Changshao a favor. What should he do? Should he pay him back in the future? Forget it, forget it. Yuan Gongzi said to himself, that guy is ridiculously strong now. I definitely won't have a chance to pay him back. What he meant was that if Jun Changshao was in trouble, he could help him resolve the crisis, so that they didn't know each other anything. However, that guy already had the cultivation of sword and martial arts saints. The only people in the world who could do anything to him were the martial emperors, who hadn't appeared for a long time. He was destined to have no chance. Yuan Gongzi saved Jun Changshao. This idea was indeed a bit unrealistic, but it also meant that those who could think of paying him back were people who knew how to repay kindness, not complete villains. Young master. The boatman in charge of driving the ship stammered. The sea, the pirates have been killed. It will definitely alarm more pirates. We have to change our route. No need. Yuan Gongzi pointed to the place where the ancient warship disappeared and said seriously, we'll pass by their route. It will be very safe. The boatman broke down and said, there are 9 islands a few hundred li away from here. They are called the 9 Dragons Islands. The one-eyed man who died just now was one of the 9 Dragons Islands island masters. Going with them is the same as throwing away our lives. Don't worry, Yuan Gongzi said. Not only are we not in danger, but 9 Dragons Island will also be covered in blood today. He could be so sure because of his understanding of Jun Changshao. This understanding was built on the fact that he had been robbed many times. Given that guy's character, if he came to the fishery province of the East Sea and ran into a pirate's lair, he would at least steal the good stuff. In the extreme case, he would kill them all. Over the years, he had collected a lot of information about Jun Changshao. When Jun Changshao destroyed a sect, he might only kill the upper echelons and then dismiss the disciples. As long as he encountered bandits, he would definitely be annihilated. Yuan Gongzi was right. Several hundred miles away, in the air above 9 connected islands, the ancient warship came to a stop. The desolate aura it emitted intimidated the thousands of pirates and the 8 island masters below. Patriarch. Li Qingyang released his spiritual thoughts and said, there are many masters who are half a step away from Wuxia in this pirate's lair. Jun Changshao was also quite surprised. Is the pirate profession very promising? So much so that a top expert would rather become an outlaw? He would, he said. These half-step Wuxiang's chi is unstable, or they use some kind of method to forcefully increase their strength. Oh, Jun Changshao was even more surprised. A method that could raise one's chi to the half-step saint realm was a bit powerful. He added, the few that Patriarch killed just now should have also been forcefully increased by some means. They seem to have the cultivation of half-step Wuxiang, but there is still a big gap between them and those who really increase their strength. Yi Xingchen frowned. This fellow knows even more than this emperor on many things. No wonder it was a bit too easy to kill them. Jun Changshao took out a loudspeaker and shouted at the solemn pirate leader below. You have been surrounded. Quickly put your hands on your heads and squat on the ground. The thousands of pirates' mouths twitched slightly. A flying warship suddenly appeared in the base, with only a few people on it. They actually dared to boast shamelessly that they had surrounded us. How arrogant were they? Boy! The 3rd island master of the 9 Dragons Island sneered and said, how dare you come to our 9 Dragons Island? You must be tired of living. Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, a loud sound was heard. On the ancient warship, a cannonball was shot out, and then hit one of the islands. It instantly hit the defensive array and caused ripples. Ka. Bang! After a while, the light barrier that enveloped the island could not withstand the domineering power, and immediately collapsed into nothingness. The pirates inside all turned pale with fright. The array that had been set up in the base for many years was broken so easily today. Pa! On the archaic warship, Xiao Zue stomped his foot on the smoking cannon. After fine-tuning and adjusting, it locked onto another island. As long as the Patriarch gave the order to fire, it would definitely continue to bombard. Everyone. Jun Changshao smiled faintly and said, Please quickly hand over the gold and silver you stole, or else, he said eerily, these 9 islands will sink to the bottom of the sea. When he came to the Eastern Seas Fishery Province, he had already sworn that if anyone dared to rob him, he would rob them of their underwear. Men of their word. Xiao Ziji breaking the island's array with one shot shocked not only the pirates, but also the 8 island masters. They all thought to themselves, this guy is a bit tough. Yes. If he was not capable, how would he dare to cause trouble with such fanfare? The first island master cupped his hands and said, Friend, you don't look familiar. You don't seem to be a local of the Eastern Seas Fishery Province, right? Cut the crap. Jun Changshao said with a cold face. Quickly hand over the money, and I'll spare your lives. This kind of line usually came from the mouth of pirates. Today, in front of his own home, someone else said it first. It was a bit ironic. The first island master's face turned ugly. He had been a pirate for many years, and this was the first time he was robbed in front of his home. How embarrassing would it be if this spread out? Brat! The hot-tempered third island master flew up and said angrily, Eat my fist. Whoosh whoosh. A vast wave of air burst out and turned into a substantial fist that smashed toward the ancient warship. Go. Destroy this guy. Whoosh. 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 The other island masters and half-step saints flew up and gathered all kinds of power to attack. As pirates who robbed others all year round, they would definitely not be willing to hand over their things. Thus, they would naturally choose to resist and fight. Besides, just a few people, what was there to be afraid of? Whoosh whoosh. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The experts of 9 Dragons Island flew up and surrounded the ancient warship. All kinds of energy bloomed like fireworks. Jun Changshao sat on the chair and interlocked his fingers. Since you don't want to cooperate, don't blame me for going crazy. Behind him, Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji Yi Xingchen, and He Wudi shook their heads and shook their shoulders. All kinds of weapons and equipment appeared, and their eyes flickered with fanatical fighting spirit. The camera froze. The warship floated in the air. Dozens of experts attacked from the air. The pirates on the island waved their flags and shouted. With the use of the long-distance camera, a beautiful scene was created. Yuan Gongzi's ship was 400 to 500 miles away from 9 Dragons Island, and it took him a full 2 hours to arrive. However, before he reached the outermost island, he smelled a mixed stench in the sea breeze. This is, the boatman exclaimed, the smell of blood. After saying this, he almost jumped up in shock because the blue sea water suddenly turned into blood while the ship was moving, and corpses in pirate costumes floated in the air. The camera zoomed out infinitely and found that there were hundreds of corpses blocking the ship's path. Plop! The boatman fell down and said in horror, It's pirates, they're all dead? Elder Lin withdrew his spiritual sense that covered the 9 islands and suppressed his shock. Young master, none of the pirates on the island are alive. They should have all been killed by Jun Changshao. Yuan Gongzi was not surprised. He looked up to the east and shook his head. Martial artists of the Eastern Seas Fishery Province, your disaster has come. Chapter 1046. East Sea Fishery State. It was a land that had been separated from the 9 states for tens of thousands of years. The landscape here was no different from other states. Because it was surrounded by the sea breeze carried a hint of saltiness. Whoosh! The ancient warship flew over quickly and landed on the beach. Whoosh! Jun Changshao jumped and landed on the thick ground. He stretched and said, Is this the East Sea Fishery State? It doesn't look any different from the Southeast First State. He didn't encounter any danger along the way. Instead, he used up a lot of hexagram stones, which made him feel a little pained. However, when he thought about how he robbed the 9 Dragons Island, and even stole the underpants of the island masters, he felt much better. Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others also got off the ship. Because they were not locals, they felt quite out of place in an unfamiliar land and environment. Jun Patriarch. Luo Zhilong cupped his hands and said, I'll take my leave first. Stepping into the land that had tortured him for decades again, his desire to die was even stronger. Brother, I'm here. You won't be lonely anymore. Don't go yet. Jun Changshao said. I don't know much about the East Sea Fishery State. I need you to be a guide. Luo Zhilong said bitterly. I don't know much about the East Sea Fishery State either. I can't be a guide for Jun Patriarch. Where is the Jimwei Empire? You should know, right? Jun Changshao asked. He came to the East Sea Fishery State to save Master Fan. Since he was already here, he had to go to the country where there were clues. Maybe he would be lucky enough to find it. The Jimwei Empire is. Luo Zhilong's eyes widened as he spoke, because a group of unidentified flying objects suddenly appeared in the sky ahead. Huh? Jun Changshao turned around, and his eyes also widened. In his field of vision, a group of winged horses were galloping in the sky. They were silver-white all over, with a red dot flashing on their foreheads. Their limbs were covered in faint white clouds as they flew in the sky. It was a beautiful sight. Oh my God! Xiao Ziji exclaimed. Horses have wings too. Horses can fly too. TCH. Yi Xingchen snorted in disdain. The world was big and full of wonders, so there was no need to make a fuss. Jun Changshao said with a burning gaze. Not bad, we can catch it and use it as a mount. The system said. This is a Pegasus, a variant of the horse family. It was born with wings and can soar in the sky. In ancient times, this beast was very common in the Falling Star continent, but it became extinct after the War of Emperors. I didn't expect it to appear in the Eastern Ocean Fishery Province. Pegasus. Jun Changxiao's figure flashed and appeared in the path of the group of horses. He grinned and said, Today they are all mine. SSSS. The Pegasi herd was startled and scattered in all directions. Hoo-hoo. Soft spiritual energy spread out from the surroundings, gradually forming an invisible net that enveloped all of them. Swish! Jun Changshao flicked his finger. The dozen or so Pegasi that were bound by spiritual energy immediately flew toward the ancient warship and were locked in the bottom cabin. From now on, you will be my mounts just like my donkeys. Here's a stamp for you. Jun Changshao flicked 3 fingers, and 3 marks appeared on the hooves of the Pegasi. The system was speechless. How bored must the host be to print marks on the hooves of the horses? Old Luo. Jun Changshao continued to ask about the matter just now. Where is the Jimwei Empire? Luo Zhilong said. I only know that the empire is at the easternmost side. Pa. Jun Changshao snapped his fingers and said, Get on the ship and head east. Because the Eastern Ocean Fishery Province was surrounded by the sea, its natural scenery was different from other provinces. However, he didn't have time to appreciate it. He had to find out whether Master Fan was alive or not. Based on the clues he had so far, he and many blacksmiths had gone to the Jimwei Empire to study the mysterious ore. Whoosh! Whoosh! The ancient warship slowly rose from the beach. Patriarch, Li Qingyang said worriedly. We've just arrived at the Eastern Ocean Fishery Province and are unfamiliar with the place. Isn't it a bit inappropriate to fly around in such a high-profile manner? Jun Changshao patted him on the shoulder and said with relief, My second disciple thinks too much. We have to keep a low profile. The pirates they encountered were all half-saints. The Eastern Ocean Fishery Province was not simple. To avoid attracting trouble by being too high-profile, Go Sheng recalled the ancient warship and hurried on with his disciples in a low-profile manner. What about the dozen Pegasi? They also shrunk along with the ship and were sealed in an independent space that could hold living creatures. TSK. Jun Changshao said in surprise. After shrinking, this warship can still hold living creatures. It's a great deal to find it in the interplanar battlefield. A few days after Jun Changshao left, Yuan Gongzi and Elder Lin finally reached the shore and stood on the Eastern Ocean Fishery Province. They were not as relaxed as Jun Changshao. In the end, they came here after a narrow escape. Therefore, after reaching their destination, they immediately felt like they had been reborn. If it were before, Yuan Gongzi might have said goodbye to the past and the grievances he had suffered in the past. But when he remembered that Jun Changshao had come early, his little heart ached. Am I going to live in that guy's shadow for the rest of my life? No. I have to pull myself together. I have to start all over again. Mr. Yuan was deeply convinced that he would be able to make a name for himself in the East Ocean Fishery Province, where he had no relatives. What made him happy was that after entering the first city from the coast, he roughly understood that the empires of the Eastern Ocean Fishery Province were always at war. An opportunity to make a name for himself. He had managed the Devil Monarch sect in an orderly manner. If he submitted to an empire, and then gradually climbed up, he would finally have the power to be below one person, and above tens of thousands of people. Wouldn't that be as easy as flipping his hand? I've decided. In the room of the inn, he said seriously, I'm going to give up my brush and join the army. Elder Lin said, Young master, there are many empires in this Eastern Ocean Fishery Province. Which one should we submit to in order to be entrusted with an important position? Yuan Gongzi put the map of the Eastern Ocean Fishery Province he just bought on the table and said, Decades ago, there were 10 empires in the Eastern Ocean Fishery Province. Today, 6 of them have been destroyed, leaving only 4 empires, Lian, Qingxian, Huyue and Jinwei. The Jinwei Empire in the east is the largest, and the terrain is the most complicated. It's very difficult for other empires to conquer it, so he pointed at the territory of Jinwei and said, Let's submit to this empire. Young master, you're wise, Elder Lin said. The next day, the two of them packed their luggage and embarked on the road to the Jinwei Empire. Yuan Gongzi was in a very good mood. Last night, he had been planning for a beautiful future. Little did he know that while they were on their way, at the border of the Jinwei Empire and Huyue Empire, Jun Gosheng had already walked in with 4 disciples and was surrounded by dozens of soldiers. He raised his hand obediently. Sir, Jun Changshao said in a dialect, I'm really a passerby. Why don't you believe me? Passerby. A soldier in armor sneered and said, In my opinion, you're spies sent by the Huyue Empire, right? Men, search him thoroughly. Boom. As soon as he finished speaking, Yi Xingchen had already appeared in front of him and punched him in the chest. He said coldly, You're asking for death. Bang, the general flew out directly. His armor was not damaged at all, but his inner body was torn apart, and he was completely dead. Knight Emperor. He was still so violent. General. The soldiers were shocked. They were about to draw their weapons when they suddenly felt a chill on their necks. A sharp longsword was close to them. Xiao Ziji stood behind and smiled. Don't move. Plop. Plop. In a moment, dozens of soldiers fainted in the wilderness. Even their underpants were taken away. Patriarch. Li Qingyang tidied up a pile of armor and said, This Jinwei Emperor is very capable. In just a few decades, he has annexed 3 empires. Jun Changshao said, Master Fan is trapped in the Eastern Sea Fishery State. I'm afraid he has something to do with it. On the way to the Jinwei Empire, they entered many cities one after another. Not only did they learn about the local customs, but they also learned a lot of things. Especially Jinwei Emperor, who was simply a terrifying existence. Patriarch. Li Qingyang handed over a set of armor and said, The armor worn by ordinary soldiers gives people the impression that it was made by a famous master. Jun Changshao said, This means that the Jinwei Empire is very rich and powerful. It's not impossible to conquer the other 3 empires and unify the Eastern Sea Fishery State. What do we do now? Go to Jinwei City and meet this Jinwei Emperor. Chapter 1047. The East Sea Fishery Province, which had been isolated from the continent for thousands of years, had given birth to countless countries of different sizes, and then gradually formed 10 empires. Until a few decades ago, when Emperor Jinwei appeared and launched the largest and most tragic war in history, the 6 empires became a thing of the past and formed the current 4 empires. The strongest and largest empire was naturally the Jinwei Empire. The other 3 empires were worried that they would follow in his footsteps, so they could only form an alliance to fight together. So the current situation in the East Sea Fishery Province was 1 against 3, and no one could do anything to each other. It was in a temporary state of stability. Jun Changshao had no interest in fighting for territory. However, Master Fan was invited by Emperor Jinwei and hadn't returned yet. He had to go and investigate. It took some time to travel from the border to Jinwei City. Gosheng was not in a hurry. He took his disciples to visit every city and asked more about the Fishery Province and Jinwei Empire. When the martial artists and ordinary people in the Tiger Leap Empire heard the name Emperor Jinwei, they were all afraid and angry. But in the Jinwei Empire, it was full of praise and extreme worship. Later, Jun Changshao gradually understood. Jinwei Empire used to be very weak overall and was bullied by other empires all year round. After Emperor Jinwei ascended the throne, he began to vigorously reform the empire. The overall strength of the empire increased day by day, and finally became the most powerful empire in the Fishery Province. "You're quite capable," Jun Changshao said with admiration. The weakest existence in the 10 empires was brought from the Bronze Group to the King Group by one person. This strength was extraordinary. Patriarch Li Qingyang, who was eating in a restaurant, glanced outside the window at the patrolling soldiers and said, "Even a small city is heavily guarded. I'm afraid it's not easy for us to sneak into Jinwei City. Let's take one step at a time." After Jun Changshao finished eating, he threw a few taels of silver on the table, and then took everyone for a stroll on the street. The city they were in was not large, and the population was only a few 100,000. However, there were soldiers patrolling back and forth on every main street. Judging from the armor they wore, they seemed to be of a high level. Every time the children who were playing on the streets saw the soldiers walk past them, their eyes would flicker with worship. Their desire to join the army was even stronger. Jun Changshao stayed out of the matter and witnessed everything in the city. The final conclusion was that the Jinwei Empire was very rich. The martial artists living here, even the children, had a strong sense of pride. Emperor Jinwei, what kind of person are you to be able to develop the Bronze Empire to such an extent? Jun Changshao's interest in Jinwei Great Emperor might be due to the fact that both of them were from the management department. However, one was in charge of the sect while the other was in charge of the country. Of course, Go Sheng began to wonder if this great Emperor Jinwei was a transmigrator. Was this great Emperor Jinwei a transmigrator? Did he have some kind of system? Impossible. The system denied it. A poor loser like the host has developed a mediocre sect into a third-rate sect after transmigrating from the falling star continent for only a few years. If the other party is also a transmigrator, it would be a disgrace if they failed to conquer the fishing province of the East Ocean after decades. Jun Changshao rubbed his chin and said, "That makes sense." "Wait. Fuck," he cursed in his heart. "Are you fucking insulting me?" The system said, "I'm just using the host as an example. If you insist, then I can't help it." Fuck. Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others who were walking behind suddenly noticed that the patriarch had stopped and was strangling himself with both hands. His face was slightly ferocious as if he was fighting. This, Luo Zhilong was dumbfounded. Strangling himself, what a sharp move. Li Qingyang and Xiao Ziji were already used to it because they had seen the patriarch laughing, getting angry, and hurting himself. Yi Xingchen frowned slightly and said to himself, "He's fighting himself. Maybe it's some kind of advanced martial art." He thought so too. He even thought that the patriarch might have some kind of improvement in martial arts when he fought with him. Gosheng said, "I'll strangle you." The system said, "Come on, let's die together." Ho. After a while, Jun Changshao let go of his hand and sat on the boulder while panting. He said, "Qingyang, how long do we need to go to Jinwei City?" "According to our walking speed, it'll take about 5 days." Li Qingyang said, "Is there a bigger city nearby?" "Yes, 300 miles away there's Taiwei City. It's not only a big city of the Jinwei Empire, but also a strategic place. Let's go and take a look." An ordinary small city was heavily guarded. Jun Changshao was very curious. What kind of deployment would a big city have? Taiwei City. It was one of the most powerful cities in the Jinwei Empire other than Jinwei City. There were hundreds of thousands of troops stationed here all year round. The city's defense was very strong, just by looking at it from a distance. Jun Changshao brought 4 disciples to the city gate and handed over their identification before they could sneak in. In the wild, 5 martial artists of different ages fainted in the grass. Their clothes were all gone. Patriarch Entering an inn, Li Qingyang touched the face-changing mask on his face and said in surprise, "They really didn't see through it." Jun Changshao said, "If this thing is not reliable, how could Xiao Mu be undercover in Taishan Shengzong for so long?" It makes sense. Everyone rested in the inn for a while. Then they began to wander around Taiwei City. As a result, except for some markets, tea houses and other places that could be accessed at will, many places were blocked. Jun Changshao also used his spiritual thoughts to cover the entire city, and found that many areas had isolation arrays that couldn't be easily penetrated. It's quite mysterious. He could easily break these isolation arrays, but he didn't do it, because after thinking about it a little, he knew that the Jinwei Empire protected it, because they didn't want to be discovered by the enemy. Jun Changshao continued to wander in the city, and then he came to the square in the central area. There was a huge statue erected there. It was a middle-aged man, who seemed to be in his 30s or 40s. He was wearing armor and pointing his sword to the sky, revealing a disdainful aura. This is Jinwei Emperor? He looks so Chinibyu. Under the statue, many city residents were kneeling on the ground as if they were praying. The accompanying children were full of excitement and anxiety. Patriarch Li Qingyang walked in from afar and said, "Today is the day of Jinwei Emperor's inheritance." Inheritance? Jun Changshao said. "What do you mean?" Li Qingyang said, "I'm not too sure. I heard people talking about it on the street." Gugugugug. In a hall directly north of the statue, a strange sound was heard. Immediately, an old man dressed in colorful clothes, who looked like a wizard, walked out. He raised a wooden staff and said, "The ceremony has begun. No noise." Swish, swish. The city residents outside the square straightened their bodies, put their right palms on their chests, and then lowered their heads slightly with a pious expression. Jun Changshao and Li Qingyang were a little confused, but since they were in the crowd, they hurriedly did the same in order to avoid being too conspicuous. Yen% at hashtag at and. The old man in colorful clothes began to chant in a strange language. Jun Changshao thought, "It's obvious that he's making it up. If it were me, I could do it too." Guguga. After a while, the old man knelt in front of the hall. His palms were on the ground, his head was facing the stone statue, and his butt was high up in the air as he said loudly, "The emperor's inheritance will last for 1,000 years." Swish, swish. As soon as he finished speaking, the eyes of the statue suddenly flashed with red light, and then it flew toward the kneeling children. The children, who were only 7 or 8 years old, were enveloped by the red light. They immediately hugged their heads and screamed. Although their parents were heartbroken, their eyes were filled with excitement. Jun Changshao, who had been releasing his spiritual sense, frowned and said, "This should be a kind of energy that corrodes the soul. Using it on children is simply inhumane. The emperor's inheritance? It's clearly a fucking crooked method." While Jun Changshao was thinking, the aura of the children tortured by the red light suddenly soared. Stage 3, Stage 4, Stage 5, Stage 12. Martial Disciple Grade 1, Grade 2, Grade 3. Peak Martial Disciple. When the red light dissipated, for children who were struggling in pain were lying weakly on the ground. However, their cultivation had already stepped into the realm of Grade 1 Martial Master. Fuck. Jun Changshao was dumbstruck. After a while, he looked out of the camera and roared with a collapsed expression, "I have a fucking system, but I didn't even level up like this after completing an epic mission." Chapter 1048. The 4 children had suddenly broken through to rank 1 Martial Master. This was simply too frightening. However, the expressions of the residents standing outside the square did not change. Only envy and gratification appeared in their eyes. Jun Changshao and Li Qingyang, who were mixed in the crowd, had their heads lowered. Otherwise, their shocked expressions would be extremely out of place with the crowd. How could they not be shocked? How could they not be shocked? Or was it that things that could make a child's cultivation soar were so common that it was no longer strange? Strange. Jun Changshao broke down. This is too strange. Father, mother. The pain of the 4 children dissipated. They struggled to stand up and said excitedly, The great emperor passed on his power to me. The great emperor passed on his power to me. Jun Changshao, who had been in a violent mood, suddenly had a sharp look in his eyes. It could be said that he instantly turned into Teacher Go Sheng. He said, "It was clearly a soul attack. Why are these children not affected at all?" "Strange, very strange," the system said. Although the two of them liked to bicker, once they got serious, they would instantly turn into Di Renjia and Yuan Fong. Jun Changshao said, "The law of equivalent exchange in steel refinement states that in order to obtain something, you have to exchange for it with an equivalent price. I absolutely cannot believe that there is a way to increase one's cultivation for no reason in this world. There must be a secret behind this." "Host, you have the system. What do you think?" "I have the system, but in exchange, I have a ticking time bomb. I have to fight for the sect for the rest of my life. I can't live the life I want. And I am destined to lose my love life. This is equivalent exchange." The system was silent. This guy's words were somewhat reasonable. However, you relied on your own strength to be single. What did relationships matter? "This pot. I won't take it." Although the children of the Li and Zhang families did not break through to peak martial master in one go, it is still very precious. The wizard in front of the hall stood up and said, "Leave them in the inheritance hall first. Wait for the people from the Emperor Palace to come and collect them." Yes, the children's parents were very excited. Their children were chosen by the great emperor and passed on his power to them. This meant that they would definitely become outstanding in the future. This was definitely a matter that would bring glory to their ancestors. After the ceremony, the 4 children were led into the training hall by the wizard. The passers-by quickly dispersed, but they were still discussing in low voices. Jun Changshao retracted his spiritual sense and thought to himself, although the 4 children have broken through to martial master, the aura they emitted quickly turned from strong to dull, giving off a sense of emptiness. It seems just like the pirates I met on the sea. They relied on some kind of method to raise their strength. It's hard for them to compare with martial artists who raised their strength on the ground. The system said, "If the host knows this method and can create thousands of half-saints in a short time to fight against thousands of Wu Huang, who will win?" 1,000 half-saints, of course. Although the half-sage pirates they encountered earlier were not as strong as the real deal, they were still strong enough to suppress Wu Huang in a fight. The system said, "That's why Emperor Jinwei has grasped the ability to rapidly increase his cultivation base. He doesn't expect his target to fight with someone of the same cultivation base. Suppressing the opponent with a higher cultivation base will work just as well." Jun Changshao fell into silence. If the system was right and Emperor Jinwei could raise the cultivation base of the children without any scruples, wouldn't he be able to create a super terrifying army of high-level cultivators over time? This is just raising children. If that guy has the ability to raise adults or powerhouses, whose cultivation bases are not weak to begin with, it will be even more terrifying. Back at the inn, Jun Changshao half lay on the bed and frowned. This Emperor Jinwei is not simple. Could he be possessed by the soul race? As far as he knew, the soul race lived by absorbing other people's energy and cultivation bases. How could they do the opposite and raise the cultivation base of others? Master Fan said that the East Sea Fishery State is brewing a great plan that concerns the survival of the 9 states. Could it be related to the Jinwei Empire and Emperor Jinwei? Jun Changshao pondered. Headache. Lying on the pillow, he rubbed his temples. The system said, whether or not Emperor Jinwei is possessed by the soul race or has a great plan, the most urgent thing is. Jun Changshao spoke first. Find Master Fan. That's right. Sigh. Jun Changshao said helplessly. I thought this trip to the East Sea Fishery State was nothing more than a sightseeing trip, but it seems to be more complicated than I thought. At first, he didn't take it seriously. After entering the Jinwei Empire's territory and witnessing the strength of this country, he began to think seriously. Damn the soul race, Jun Changshao complained. Because of your unpredictable existence, I always fill in the blanks when I encounter something suspicious. I even become very sensitive and vigilant. The system said, The host and the disciple inherited the ancient martial emperor's physique and shoulder the mission of saving the world. It should be an equivalent exchange. The next day, Jun Changshao and the disguised disciple set off, and then entered several cities of different sizes one after another. Every time, they saw wizards holding training ceremonies in the square. After Yi Xingchen and He Wudi saw it, they said in disbelief, "Just being shrouded in the light for a while can greatly raise the cultivation base. It's unbelievable." What they saw was nothing more than children breaking through from no cultivation base to the martial master level. Although they were surprised, it was still within the acceptable range. 3 days later, they came to a city closest to Jinwei City and witnessed 100 Wuzong martial artists breaking through to the martial king level under the red light. They were so shocked that their hearts trembled. The corner of Jun Changxiao's mouth twitched violently. Although the sect of all times also had a way for disciples to break through to the martial king level, it required various medicinal materials to refine pills. These people broke through with the red light. How did they do it? If the statue was not strictly guarded, and there were various formations, Go Sheng would have smashed it to see what secrets were hidden in the eyeballs. Just as Jun Changshao was feeling depressed, he suddenly found that the group of martial artists who broke through to the martial king level had a flash of red light in their eyes, and their expressions were also dull for a short time. Could it be that the so-called Great Emperor's training can improve one's cultivation base, but the price is to be dominated by some kind of power? Outside the city, Jun Changshao walked out with his disciples. A beautiful woman held a pendant in her hand and half knelt on the mound. Tears fell like rain as she cried, "Brother Feng, you said you would marry me. Why didn't you come back after going to the Emperor Palace?" Emperor Palace. Only those who were taught by the Great Emperor were eligible to enter. Along the way, Jun Changshao learned from the residents that whether it was children or teenagers, they were proud to enter the Emperor Palace and be loyal to the Great Emperor Jinwei. They were even extremely fanatical about it. Patriarch Li Qingyang said, "If we follow this official road, we will reach Jinwei City in about 2 hours." Jun Changshao glanced at the crying girl and waved his hand. "Let's go." 2 hours later, Jun Changshao took 4 disciples and stopped in front of the city gate of Jinwei City. In terms of scale, this city was inferior to the Great Emperor's imperial city. There were very few wars in the 9 provinces of the Starfall continent. Even if there were, no one dared to attack the imperial city. Therefore, after thousands of years of development, the prosperity of the Great Emperor's imperial city was incomparable to that of any other province. Of course, in terms of momentum, Jinwei City was even better than the Great Emperor's imperial city. Jun Changshao and his disciples had just stopped at the gate of the city when they sensed the aura emanating from the city. It was as if they were about to go to war. "Let's go in." The general guarding the gate allowed them to pass after strictly checking their identity. Jun Changshao led Li Qingyang and the others into the city full of war aura. The first thing that caught their eyes was the huge statue at the end of their field of vision that was bigger than any other city. "Great Emperor Jinwei, I, Jun Changshao, am here." Chapter 1049. When Jun Changshao entered Jinwei City, dozens of fully armed soldiers were floating in the air on Pegasus beasts in the outskirts of Taiwei City. They were all martial kings with impressive strength. Although martial kings were common on the continent, it was rare for them to appear in groups. These soldiers were responsible for patrolling the empire's territory. Today, they unexpectedly found 5 unconscious martial artists in the grass. "General," a subordinate reported, "these 5 are residents of Taiwei City. They seem to have been poisoned and are in a deep coma." The dignified general said with a cold face, "Their clothes are gone, and so are their IDs. It seems that a spy has sneaked in." "Pass down the order. All cities enter a state of alert. Distribute the portraits of these 5 people. As long as there are similarities, arrest them regardless of the reason." "Yes. Puchi, Puchi." The Pegasus beasts flapped their wings and flew away, then scattered to the major cities. After a while, the portraits of Jun Changshao, and the others in disguise were posted all over the city. Such swift action showed how strong the Jinwei Empire was under the vigorous development of Emperor Jinwei. It was no wonder that the other three empires would band together to fight against such an opponent. It was as tragic as Yuan Gongzi PK Jun Changshao. Speaking of Yuan Gongzi, he had already entered the Jinwei Empire's territory. After feeling the empire's strength and foundation, he said proudly, "Emperor Jinwei should be in urgent need of talents like me." Elder Lin said, "In just a few decades, Emperor Jinwei has developed a bullied empire into a giant. If he can get young masters' help, it won't be a problem to unify the East Sea Fishery Province." Yuan Gongzi said with a smile, "It's a wise choice to cross the sea." Plop! A white-haired old man walked into the cave with a cane, then knelt on the ground and kowtowed to the stone platform in the center of the pool. "Greetings, Your Majesty." There was a person sitting on the stone platform. Because of the red clouds, it was difficult to see his face. "I'm in seclusion. What's the matter, State Preceptor?" A deep voice came. From the tone, it was roughly inferred that it was a man in his 30s or 40s. "Your Majesty," the State Preceptor said solemnly, "the ominous omen that I deduced a few months ago is getting more and more intense now. I'm afraid it will endanger my Jinwei Empire soon." A voice came from the red mist. "The Imperial Preceptor always says that there are bad omens, but in the end, they are easily resolved by me, so don't take it too seriously. Your Majesty, this time, no matter what kind of danger it is, I can easily resolve it. You may leave." "Understood." The Grand Master bowed and retreated until he left. When he returned to his residence, he used his special ability to open a formation similar to an image. He was relieved when he found that Fan Yezi was still trapped on the dry Prosperity Island. The ominous omen is related to this person. As long as I can control him, I might be able to find a way out of this crisis. Inside the secret chamber. Pooh! The man who was shrouded in red mist spat out a mouthful of blood. Then his ferocious face was revealed, as if he had been roasted by a raging fire. "Jinwei, my disciple." A sinister laugh echoed in his ears. "Do you really think that you can suppress me in the depths of your heart by relying on the peerless Ignis technique? Do you really think that you can control your body forever?" That's right. This middle-aged man was none other than Emperor Jinwei, who had piqued Jun Changxiao's interest. Because he was being tortured, it was hard to tell that this was the Jinwei Empire's most revered emperor. Emperor Jinwei forcefully suppressed the restless power in his body and said angrily, "Is it that important for you to control my body? Don't you want to make a name for yourself? Hand over your body, and I'll help you accomplish it easily. I'll even help you unify the entire Falling Star continent." A sinister voice sounded. Hee. Emperor Jinwei's expression gradually relaxed. He sneered and said, "If I hand over my body to you, I'll also become a mindless puppet. What's the point of reaching the peak of the martial Tao?" Sigh. A sinister voice sounded. "I didn't hesitate to merge my remaining spiritual sense into your body to help you become stronger in a short period of time. In the end, shut up." Emperor Jinwei said angrily, "You're just using me. You're only taking advantage of me after I become strong enough. You're the son of the former emperor of the Jinwei Empire. If I didn't teach you martial arts and help you break through, would you be where you are today? I asked you to sacrifice your body, but you refused. How unfilial of you." Emperor Jinwei circulated his mental cultivation technique and forcefully suppressed the power that wanted to take over his mind. He said coldly, "Your appearance is just icing on the cake. Even without you, I can still succeed." Kikik. A strange laughter sounded. "I'd like to see how long you can suppress it with the supremely fire art. Don't blame me for not reminding you. If there's even the slightest mistake, all your wealth, status, and power will be gone." Whoosh! As soon as he finished speaking, the soul-like energy in his body dissipated under the suppression of the supremely fire art. It once again hid in the depths of his body. Huff huff. Emperor Jinwei's breathing quickened, and his forehead was covered in cold sweat. This old man is breaking the seal faster and faster. If I can't comprehend the supremely fire art to a higher level, My body will be taken over by him sooner or later. Sigh. It's all my fault for being too greedy. I've already obtained the Leaf Fire old man's peerless technique, but I still accepted that guy's bewitchment. That's why I'm in such a state. The ominous omen that the Grand Master mentioned. Could it be that I can't suppress it anymore, and my body will be taken over, and I'll do something that will bring disaster to the Jinwei Empire? I won't allow it. I won't allow it. Emperor Jinwei clenched his fists and said angrily, I have the potential to become a martial emperor. How can I become a puppet? Whoosh. He put his palms together and circulated his mental cultivation technique. Whoosh. Whoosh. Suddenly, the stone doors on the left and right opened. Two martial artists with red eyes walked in and half knelt on the ground. They said respectfully, Greetings, Your Majesty. I need your lives to complete my great undertaking. Hand over your souls and blood. Emperor Jinwei said calmly. It was as if he had said this countless times before. Yes, Your Majesty. The two martial artists sat down with their legs crossed. They raised their palms and slammed it on their divine spirits, killing themselves on the spot. Whoosh. Whoosh. Emperor Jinwei opened his hands gently, and his fingers formed into claws. Huff huff. Two streams of red light appeared and shrouded the bodies of the dead martial artists. In an instant, only their clothes were left. Ding. An earring hanging on one of the martial artists' belt fell. From the carvings on it, it should belong to a pair. No one knew who had the other half. Huff huff. After a period of nourishment, Emperor Jinwei regained the coldness and dominance that an iron-blooded emperor should have. He said expressionlessly, You probably never dreamed that your disciple would merge the mental cultivation technique you taught me with the supreme Leaf Fire art. As long as there are enough resources, it won't be a problem for my mental cultivation technique to reach a higher level. So, he paused for a moment and laughed sinisterly. You're dreaming if you want to control my body. Chapter 1050. Jinwei City. Jun Changshao and his 4 disciples stood on the wide street, watching the soldiers in armor walk past them. They all subconsciously wondered if they came in the wrong way and entered the military camp by mistake. Until they vaguely heard a hawker shouting. They were sure that this was indeed a city, not a military camp guarded by a large army. The city was full of heavily armed soldiers. This level of security was too exaggerated. What made Goshen collapse the most was, even if they went to the inn to stay, there were soldiers at the door. It was like a super alert posture. If he didn't see the residents on the street trading and whispering in harmony, he even suspected that someone had launched a mutiny and put the city under martial law. Patriarch. Li Qingyang transmitted his voice. This Jinwei city's security is terrifying. TSK. Yi Xingchen snorted disdainfully. In his opinion, only people who were afraid of death would make the city so serious. This meant that Jinwei Heavenly Emperor was just a coward. Daring to use the name Heavenly Emperor was blasphemy. As a former martial emperor, Pei Aniu didn't like Jinwei Heavenly Emperor, who he had never met before. If the conditions permit, he didn't mind teaching him a good lesson. Let's go. After Jun Changshao booked the room, he said, Let's go out for a stroll. He didn't go directly to the forbidden area of the palace, but planned to inquire about the situation in the city first. Go Sheng would never doubt that Emperor Jinwei had the ability to turn an empire that had been bullied by others into a hegemon of this era. Thus, before he understood the other party's background, he definitely wouldn't foolishly challenge him. Patriarch, Li Qingyang said, There are a lot of people in front. Let's go. Jun Changshao waved his hand and said, Let's go and take a look. The 5 of them approached and found that it was an official bulletin board. There was a small array engraved on it, and it was flashing weakly. Projection array? Jun Changshao was stunned. It was indeed an image formation, but its level was a little low. It had been activated for a while, but the relevant data had not been transmitted yet. Although the Jinwei Empire is powerful, it can't be compared with the mainland in some aspects. Jun Changshao secretly said. Swish at this moment, a scene finally appeared on the flickering light screen. Everyone present stared with wide eyes. Gradually, 5 different portraits appeared on the screen, accompanied by the words "Wanted Criminals." So it's an arrest warrant. I thought you were going to announce something. Let's go, let's go. Everyone left one after another, completely unaware that the 5 people who had just entered from behind had disappeared at this moment. The camera even mischievously gave 5 empty virtual numbers special effects. In a slightly dark alley, Li Qingyang said nervously, "Patriarch, we have disguised ourselves. How did we become wanted criminals?" "Of course," Yi Xingchen said lightly. "Those 5 people must have been discovered." He Woody said, "We can't use this identity anymore. Otherwise, the moment we step out, we will be discovered by the soldiers. Return to your original appearance." Jun Changshao, who was sitting in front of the stairs, snapped his fingers. However, just as they took off the disguise masks, a group of routine patrolling soldiers suddenly appeared at the entrance of the alley. Seeing that the 5 people were a little sneaky, they shouted, "What are you doing?" "Nothing, just chatting," Li Qingyang said with a smile. "Chatting?" The leader of the soldiers walked over and said with a cold face, "Take out your identity card." This? Li Qingyang's expression was a little interesting. He had an identity card, but it was just an imposter's. If he took it out, he would definitely be exposed. "Take it out." Clang, clang, clang. Dozens of soldiers surrounded him and brandished their weapons. A bunch of ferocious-looking heads almost filled up the camera lens. "Sir," Li Qingyang said, "I forgot to bring my identity card." "Why didn't you forget to wear your pants?" the leader of the soldiers shouted. This? Li Qingyang was speechless for a moment. Yi Xingchen, who was standing next to him, stood up and put a hand on his shoulder to pull him back. Then he lowered his head and walked forward. Just as he was about to speak, Jun Changshao pushed his head away and said with a smile, "Sir, don't be angry, don't be angry. Let's talk nicely." He raised his hand and handed over the silver. "Kid," the leader of the soldiers sneered and said, "Are you trying to bribe me? It's just a small token of my appreciation." As Jun Changshao spoke, his finger turned lightly, and the silver was instantly replaced with gold. The soldier who was strictly enforcing the law frowned slightly and put away his weapon. He quietly put away the gold and said lightly, "There are rules in the city. You must bring your identity card at all times. Don't forget it next time." "Understood, understood," Goshing said with a trembling smile. His performance of humbling himself was enough to make Su Xiaoma, who had just gone undercover in Taishan Shengzong, feel ashamed. Clang clang. The soldier put his sword back into the sheath and turned away. "Patriarch," Yi Xingchen said rather angrily, "just kill them. Why do you have to grovel?" If the soldier hadn't been pushed away, he would have been a corpse. Stars. The smile on Jun Patriarch's face disappeared. He said seriously, "You must remember that you can't act on impulse in whatever you do. A little impatience will spoil the great plan." Yi Xingchen fell silent. "Patriarch," Li Qingyang said delightedly, "do you have a plan?" Jun Changshao put his hands behind his back and said, "Not yet." Everyone's mouth twitched. Why did they feel that they came to the fishery province of the East Sea with the Patriarch for nothing but eating, drinking, and having fun? Jun Changshao did not have a perfect plan, but after being wanted, he realized that the first thing he had to do was to get an identity. Otherwise, he would be caught hundreds of times before he could even get close to the palace. Just kidnap a few people outside the city, kill them, and pretend to be them, Yi Xingchen said. He had suggested the same thing before, but the Patriarch mercifully chose to poison the 5 people. As a result, their scheme was exposed. It was night. Everyone gathered in the alley again. This time, they had the experience and hid themselves in advance. "I've found out that the women in the brothel don't need to prove their identity. You can pretend to be them, get the customers drunk, and get some useful information," Jun Changshao said in a low voice. "Xiao Ziji, Yi Xingchen, he Woody," Li Qingyang broke down. "You want me to dress up as a woman?" Jun Changshao patted him on the shoulder and said, "You all have delicate features. If you dress up a little, you won't be able to see any flaws. You'll definitely be peerless beauties." "I object," Yi Xingchen said. He was a martial emperor, but he was going to dress up as a woman. He might as well drink wine all day. Li Qingyang was calmer. He said, "Patriarch, what about you? I'll plan everything behind the scenes." Jun Changshao straightened his collar and said sanctimoniously, "Patriarch," he said seriously, "leave the planning to me. It's more suitable for you to take the senior brothers to dress up as women." "No," Jun Changshao said, "you can do it. I believe in you." Everyone rolled their eyes. The system said, "Are you sure you want us to dress up as women for information, not for your own pleasure?" "You don't understand," Jun Changshao said seriously. "This is also a form of cultivation, a form of experience." Xiao Ziji clenched his fists and abruptly clasped them together. Whoosh! Whoosh! The already damaged street suddenly cracked. Earth pillars shot up one after another, and then all the soldiers who were attacking Yi Xingchen were sent flying. After a short fight, the charging soldiers immediately realized the strength of the unknown person, so they stopped and gathered their spirit energy in their hands. Powerful longbows appeared out of thin air, and then they knocked special arrows. However, just as they were about to pull the bowstring, they suddenly felt a gust of wind from the side. Woody hovered nearby, leaning and crossing his arms. He smiled and said, "You are not a hero when you attack in the dark. How dare you, thief? Die!" Two Peak Martial King soldier leaders flew over from afar and slashed down with their battle axes. Swish! Swish! Two powerful saber lights slashed down from above. Woody was still smiling. It was not until the saber lights touched the center of his eyebrows that he suddenly froze. His black hair was gradually blown away. Be human. The most important thing is to be happy. Bang bang. The saber aura that was close to his face was broken, and the two soldiers who were pressing down were instantly sent flying. Woody opened his hands, and rays of 7 mysteries glow shot out rapidly, directly injuring the bow-wielding soldiers to the ground. Hiss hiss hiss. On the city tower, dozens of fully armed Pegasi flapped their wings and flew over. The soldiers riding on them were all martial kings. Whoosh! Yi Xingchen dragged a stream of light and flew over quickly, instantly fighting with the troops. Wherever the sword light passed, heads, corpses, and limbs flew everywhere. Blood even splashed on the camera. Whoosh! 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 A large number of soldiers emerged from the city tower, the city, and even the mini courtyards. They marched toward the battlefield, and the number of people increased from a few hundred to thousands, and even tens of thousands. Looking down from the sky, the 4 disciples of the sect of all times seemed to have activated their unparalleled mode and started a crazy slaughter in Chang'an City. Whoosh whoosh, whoosh whoosh whoosh, all kinds of energy burst out, and the soldiers and warhorses flew in all directions in slow motion. This kind of siege-like battle scene was extremely hot-blooded. It also indirectly proved that the strongest sect of all times was hot-blooded. It was just unintentionally classified as a comedy. Strange. Jun Changshao sat on the highest point of the city tower and said, "The battle outside is so loud. Why didn't the people living here come out to watch the show?" Whoosh whoosh whoosh. He was wearing the true young suit, and the red cloak danced with the special effect of the return of the great sage. Under the contrast of the night, the level of acting tough had increased by many levels. Also, Jun Changshao looked straight ahead, at the forbidden palace that seemed to be isolated by some kind of power, and asked in confusion, "Is Emperor Zhenwei hugging his concubine to sleep?" Buzz! Buzz! At this moment, streams of light flashed outside the forbidden palace. A light shadow appeared behind Yi Xingchen at an extremely fast speed, and threw a palm attack, saying, "Die brat!" Boom! Energy exploded above the street. Whoosh! Yi Xingchen fell awkwardly on the ruins of a broken building, his eyes flashing with anger. The old man who attacked was surprised because not only did he miss his target, but he was also stopped by a young man in armor. "Old man." Jun Changshao grabbed his wrist and said with a cold glare, "You want to kill this king's disciple? You're dreaming." Whoosh whoosh. The aura of the sword and martial sages suddenly burst out, like two ancient beasts erupting from their bodies. Seeing this, the half-saint expert was so shocked that his scalp almost exploded. No! Bang! Jun Changshao threw a punch, and the fist that carried the supreme love of the patriarch hit the old man's chest fiercely. His whole body flew out of the city like a cannonball, and finally hit the mountain and died on the spot with his head tilted. Whoosh! 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 Outside the Forbidden Palace, streams of light flashed frequently. In an instant, 20 half-saint level martial artists appeared out of thin air. They were slightly different from the previous old man. Their eyes flashed red, and there was no expression on their faces. The same thing was that their overall strength seemed to be relatively weak. It should be forcibly promoted instead of being cultivated on the ground. Puppets. Jun Changshao frowned. Boom! Boom! At the rear, Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji and others did not stop. They continued to use Xu Wei Wuyang's unparalleled sword to harvest the attacking soldiers. Young master, Elder Lin, who was rushing through the night, said, I heard that Jinwei City is heavily guarded. Can we sneak in with this identity? No problem, Yuan Gongzi said proudly. Then he looked in the direction of Jinwei City and said with great expectation, This city will definitely let me make a comeback and achieve success. Jun Changshao, you made me lose the Demon Emperor's Gate, but you gave me a high position in the future. How should I thank you? Under the night, a small half of Jinwei City, under the unscrupulous battle of Li Qingyang and the other three, it had been severely damaged, and the scope of the impact was still spreading to other areas. According to the speed of Yuan Gongzi and Elder Lin, the battle did not stop during the period. While when they arrived at their destination, they should still be able to see the complete ruins of the city. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.